welcome everyone back to episode 6060 of the RF Generation Collectorcast. The gang is all here again, making a habit out of this. How are my good friends Chris and Kelsey doing tonight?
Doing great. I
Doing
can't
very
believe
well.
60. I feel like we're going to put
Yeah.
out as many episodes this year as we have in the past 10 years.
I would, yeah. I think you're probably pretty close.
That would be a feat. And then next year is going to be a record year where no bi-weekly period will be missed.
Let's just go weekly next year.
Whoa! Slow down there, Tex.
Calling it, yeah. 52 7-minute episodes. So like I said, the gang's all back again. So let's just jump right into it. Kelsey, you've been playing some Nintendo, I would assume.
Yeah, not as many games, but still probably about the same amount of time. I played through Skate or Die 2, which I did in an afternoon, which is a weird game where you are 100% the villain in that game. Started some Dragon Warrior 4, which I'm still working on. I just got to chapter 5, which I think is the final chapter. But it's been really interesting so far. I like how it's broken up into chunks and you're playing different people's stories and then they're all like kind of coming together in this final chapter. And the third chapter in particular, you play as like a merchant, and you're like just trying to build up enough money to get your own shop, and you're like finding items to take them to have your wife like resell them and stuff. Like it was really interesting twist on JRPGs, which I appreciated. I got together with my buddy again. We worked a little more on Digital Devil Saga on the PS2, which I'm still really enjoying. My daughter has been watching YouTube, and one of the YouTube people she watches was playing Hello Neighbor, and so she kept talking about it. And so I asked a couple buddies, I'm like, does anybody have this game? Can I borrow it and give it a try? And one of my friends had it for Switch, so we borrowed it off him and tried it with her, and it is so... It's like the worst game I've ever played. Like, I would hate playing this game by myself, but it is really fun to play with my kids because they are both so into it, and it's like a stealth survival horror game kind of, but with like a not as scary a setting, so my 4-year-old can handle it. And she gets really into it. Like, she just gets so tense when the neighbor's coming up, and then she laughs so hard when we like steal something out of his house, and just having a good time with it. But it's so broken and janky and ugly and directionless, and I don't understand why they like it, but they do. They like it a lot.
It's been on my radar like a little bit, like I'm aware of it, like kind of tangentially through like, it's being mentioned and things like that. But yeah, I have no concept of the type of game that it is. It just kind of like shows up once in a while, and some of my recommended feeds are like on a PC gaming store or something like that.
It's just a mess. Like, you gotta sneak into this guy's house and steal things and like solve little puzzles, but they like don't really tell you anything, so you're really just exploring and trying to trial and error your way through it. Okay. We played some Nintendo Land with her too. Like, we got the whole family together, pulled out the Wii remotes, and did the Luigi's Mansion one where someone's a ghost and everyone else has to catch it, and the Mario Tag one. I had a really great time. My daughter got so into those, and when she was the ghost, she gets so excited because you can't see her on the screen, and then when she got somebody, she'd like scream something out like, "I'm a genius!" So funny. Oh, and I forgot to mention for the Hello Neighbor, because she's been watching all these YouTube videos, she's trying to talk like the people in the videos, and she doesn't quite understand what she's saying. So she's like, "Dad, did you see that raven? Leave me a like and a comment."
Dude, I have to have mentioned this before on a previous show that my son, older son, like, he narrates his play. Like, he'll be alone in the room, people in the room, and people are like, "Okay, everybody, welcome back." Like, he just like loads into a world and he's like, "Okay." And then how like streamers will sometimes just try to like fill the void, they just have to talk all the time. So he thinks he has to talk all the time. He'll be in there like, "Okay, you might recognize this place, you might not recognize this place. I've been here before a couple times. If you follow me, you're gonna be okay. Just load up and like he talks the entire time." And now it's moving into places that aren't video games.
Oh, no.
Last week he's playing hockey. And he's 6 years old, and he's on the ice, and it's like a little scrimmage across ice at the end of practice, and he pushes the puck up to a teammate, and the teammate scores, and there's no goalie. It's like the goal is just kind of like down on its side, so it's a smaller target. And then the last thing that happens in the practice, he gets a little pass and he shoots and he scores. And we were like, it's never happens. And like, it's like, oh yeah, okay, he scored. And then we hear him down there, and he's like, got a stick up in the air, and he's going around, and he's like, yeah. And then he says, thanks for watching.
Oh my goodness.
But it's a different world in such a weird way,
Yeah.
with the way that they're talking, and it's, we laugh, but like, sometimes we think about it, we're like, man, where's this going? But that's so cool to hear that she does that.
Yeah, she's said some things that I'm slowly figuring out where they came from because they don't make sense at the time. Like, oh, she saw that in a video. Yeah. The only other thing I played is I tried the Mario Bros. 35 on the Switch over the last week, and it is a lot of fun. It's a little frustrating because they tweaked the original Mario Bros. Game in like weird ways that I don't feel like they needed to. Like the jump mechanic works way differently. Like when you bounce off an enemy, like you get like a ton of airtime that you shouldn't get. And when you pick up like a fire flower when you're little, it'll like fully grow you into Fire Mario. Just little things that kind of grind my gears because they're not what I'm used to. But outside of that, it's really fun. Like you play through a couple levels and they're all in like random orders, and then all of a sudden there's like 10 extra piranha plants on screen and a Bowser, and like bloops are flying at you, and it just doesn't make any sense, and it's just fun to figure out how to get through those.
Oh, so for a sec, I was a little bit lost because I saw this and I was just in my head thinking of 3D All Stars. But now I see you're talking about 35.
Yeah,
so
sorry
like,
if
my
I
head
didn't
was in a
clear
different.
that.
My head,
Yeah.
that was just me. Like my head was in a different spot. So I get what you're saying now.
Yeah, it's like the Tetris 99, but with the original Super Mario
Right.
Bros. Yeah,
I thought for a minute you were enjoying Super Mario Sunshine.
that has never happened. Yeah, that's it for my week.
So cool.
Hope-
so
hopefully be
Skater
done.
Die in an afternoon. I
Yeah.
remember definitely playing Skater Die, 1 and 2, and Ski or Die, briefly. But
You can beat Ski or Die in
way...
like 20 minutes. That game has
Yeah, right?
no preset high scores, so you just slam through it.
Yep, and then so I remember distinctly, like the Skater Die 1 and, moving around the map and everything. I don't remember a ton about Skater Die 2, to be honest, so...
There's no map.
you-
It's like a side scroll. Well, not even just a straight side scroll, because there's some of the levels that are like maze-like. You go into like rooms and stuff and find items. But right at the start of the game, you run over the mayor's wife's dog and like kill it. And then so the mayor's wife's really annoyed, and she tells the mayor like, we need to ban skateboarding in town. And then the first boss is you fight the mayor's wife. You killed her dog, and then you go find her and like fight her. And it like, you're just a terrible person in this game. But there is
you
the whole
pushed your way through.
point of the game after that is to build, like, you have to get plans and raise money and stuff to build this like really wicked half pipe for all you and your friends to skate on. And then after you've beat the story mode, there's just half pipe. Like you just skate around the half pipe and try and get as many points as you can. And the preset high score is 99,999 points. So you need like a really killer run. So it took me I think it took me 4 hours to finish the game, and 3 hours was like playing through the game, and then I just spent an hour on the half pipe like trying to figure out how to get points. But once I got used to the controls on it, it was actually really neat and interesting, and I had a lot of fun on the half pipe specifically.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, and then how much do you think you have left on Dragon Warrior 4 before you can close the book on that guy?
I'm in the last chapter, and if it's anything like any of the other Dragon Warriors, the last chapter is going to take me as long as the whole rest of the game did. So I've probably still
Really?
got like 20 hours left, I'd imagine.
Because of grinding mainly, or
Yeah,
or
because
what?
in all the other ones, like you really progress fine until you get to the last area, and then it's like now you need to grind out 15 levels before you can like get through here and fight the last boss. So
Right.
that's what I'm anticipating.
Gotcha. I remember first getting into JRPGs, very, very late compared to, some of you guys that have been on them on NES and Super NES, and just remember just getting to areas and just dying. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And people are like, you just have to grind in that area for a little while. And then you grind 10 levels and you're like, oh, okay, so I would pretty much grind an area until and my kind of rule of thumb was like once I can like kill everything in this area in like 1 or 2 hits or like not use a single healing item for like like 5 fights or something like that, like then I feel like I can move on. So I don't know if you have that same type of
Yeah,
deal.
you try and like I'm usually like I need X amount of money to upgrade this weapon or armor or something, and then I feel like okay, I've made $2,000. I go buy my new half plate armor. I can move to the next town, and then I get there and it's like, oh, they got broadsword, so I got to grind out $4,000 to get this broadsword, and then I can go on. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. So it sounds like you're having fun. Got a good, nice little variety in there. So, Chris, what have you been playing since we talked last?
Well, I got in the mail from the very slow boat from Japan, but when I ordered, that was the only way they could come in because that was at that point in time when I ordered, nobody but like DHL was doing any like fast shipping out of Japan because of the COVID stuff. So I'd ordered 2 Neo Geo games, and so they came in like about maybe a week ago. I had ordered them three months ago, so that shows you how long that stuff takes. But I got in Samurai Showdown 2 and Fatal Fury Special for the AES.
You've been waiting on those for like 3 or 4 months now.
Yeah, it's like literally been like 3 months since I ordered them. It was like the beginning of July. Is basically
it's like ordering from Limited Run.
Yeah, kind of.
It's faster than that.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
When my first Limited Run order, just looking at this page, like in production, like I don't know if this is for me.
Yeah, which is weird because like I ordered the AES from Japan, but that they use DHL and it was there like not even like in a week. It's kind of crazy, but anyway. So they came in, and so I've been playing those, mostly Samurai Showdown, because Samurai Showdown's a fantastic game. And it's nice because like when I first get the games in with the Unibios, you can cheat. You can put cheats on. So, you can kind of like, I'm going to play through. I want to see all the guys. I want to see the end boss. I want to see all the levels. And I'm shocked because I used to play Samurai Showdown 2 quite a bit in the arcade. But like the difficulty was always so sky high, you could never get very far, and I didn't care. It didn't matter how many tokens you put in; like people were just going to destroy you after a certain point in time. So now being able to beat it, I am really shocked at how much content is in the game. There's like all these cutscenes and everything that are in there, and like the ending is like really pretty long and in depth. So there's like way more story to Samurai Showdown 2 than I ever understood.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's like really in depth. So, I would encourage folks, if you've never gone through, at least I was playing, you can choose whether to play the MVS version or the AES version because it's all the same cart, but I was playing the AES version. I don't know if the arcade version doesn't, although of course you could, I'm sure with a Unibios you could just play it on an MVS as well. But so that's what I've been playing because that's what I used to play the most of, and trying to get down some of the moves again because there's really like a lot of special moves per character in that one, and trying to remember all. And then you have like that fury gauge that's at the bottom, so when it fills up you have that like super weapon breaking move that you can do. And you can just spam it until until the gauge goes down. So of course that's what you do, right? You just spam that move. But
so who's your go-to character?
Homaru. Yeah. Who do you like?
It's been years. I don't have one anymore.
Oh, okay. Homaru's who I always used to play with, but there was like in the first one there was Tam Tam, and I used to play as Tam Tam a bit, but unless I didn't see him, he may be in this one, but maybe I didn't fight him for whatever reason because it's also random, right? Whoever you get in the lineup. There's like a lot of characters in there. You can play as Kuroku or however you say it. They've got 2 hidden characters. So you can play as,
I don't know if I knew that either.
Yeah, you can play as Kuroku, the guy with the flags, right? So if you have like, it's kind of like Mortal Kombat, right? Where they like, first off, he's like a hidden character. Where like if you do so well, he'll fight you. He'll like jump in. And it's like, oh, okay, and you go to his special lair and fight him. And then with the cheats, you can actually play as him if you want to. And also with the cheats, you can play as the end boss if you want to as well. So like a lot of content packed into Samurai Showdown 2. So yeah, I would recommend that to anybody. And then also Fatal Fury Special, which I've not been playing as much of, simply because time. But I also want to spend some more time with that one. It's the Fatal Fury Special, I want to say, was... I don't think it was it maybe out after Fatal Fury 2? It's always hard to kind of keep track because it's not exactly
That's what I always assumed, but I can't confirm that.
I think it's after Fatal Fury 2 is where that one came, because they just added some more characters to it. But all those SNK games, they did all this weird stuff like World Heroes, World Heroes 2, World Heroes Jet, World Heroes Perfect. I mean, it's just hard to keep track of where it fell in the timeline. But I played a little bit of that one. I have to get back used to it because the only character I ever remember anything with is usually Terry. So
sure.
And that's usually I end up playing with, but I'll need to spend a little more time with it and look up some move sheets because I just don't know a lot of those characters and all the different moves that are involved with them. So as far as that goes, I've been helping a little bit kids, like how you talking about with Game Pass. You can download so many. So, I don't care. It doesn't cost me anything. So the kids will go through and look at the list of Game Pass games, and they're like, oh, okay, download this, download that, and they'll just try them out. If they don't like them, who cares? I'll delete them off of there. And they've been trying some ones out. I haven't really been playing them too much, but I did get dragged back into some more Minecraft dungeons. So
remember you guys both mentioning that your kids were into Piku Niku.
Oh yeah,
which is the free game on Epic this week.
Epic,
so I might see if my kids will give that a try too.
Oh, I bet. I mean, Eden's probably played through it 3 or 4 times now. I mean, she's beat it. She just still likes to play. So she'll start a new game. She knows how to do everything now, so she can run through most of it pretty fast.
Nice.
But yeah, it's kind of one of those goofy games. I think your kids would like it.
It's great. It's so good.
Minecraft Dungeons, I think we're on the last boss, which it's kind of ridiculous. I think for a kid's game, it's kind of ridiculous because, getting to the last boss is not so bad, right? It's pretty okay, well, if you take your time and do the right stuff and use your items and do everything you're supposed to do, not too bad, right? The end boss is just ridiculous. Just
really difficult.
Tons of insta-kill moves and complex patterns. And my kids were just so frustrated almost instantly playing it. And they loved playing the rest of the game. So I kind of felt disappointed for them. But it was just one of those situations if they die really quickly, which it does because it's one-hit kills, I can't raise them fast enough because if I try to raise them up, it just kills me. And you wipe. And you have to start it over. So, I don't know. I told them, you can grind. It's kind of that guy. You can grind to get, more powerful and better items and then maybe try it again. But... I don't know. I don't know if they'll want to follow through with it. It really hit me this is not right. For a kid's game, this is a bad choice, I think. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing.
Cool. So I don't know if we've been over this before. I've never played an SNK fighting game.
What?
Ever. We had Neo Geo at our Pizza Hut. And we would go there to pick up, pizza. And we didn't go there very often. We went to our other place, but when we went to Pizza Hut, it never had a fight. It was always the baseball game or the golf or some other stuff. And I've never played one. It was always a Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat house, and all of our arcades just were full of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter machines. Never played a Fury that is fatal. Never played a Showdown with samurais.
King of Fighters.
Nope.
Wow.
Zero. And not even I played it, didn't like it. Never have I touched a controller or a arcade stick attached to those games. It was just never an option for us.
That amazes me because they were everywhere around here. Every MVS would have usually one fighter loaded up, and then you'd probably have one whatever. Usually it was a puzzle bobble or something.
Yeah, puzzle bobble was always
right.
Staple.
And then you'd usually have a shooter, and then whatever rando thing they wanted to throw.
Metal Slug.
Yeah, a lot of times it was a Metal Slug or something like that.
Every time I played, I think it was almost always Metal Slug or maybe baseball. What was it called?
Baseball Stars.
Yeah.
Baseball Stars. Yeah.
Yeah, Neo Turf Masters, that was pretty common. I would see that in a lot of Neo Geos. So But yeah, I can't imagine
But yeah,
like I couldn't go anywhere and not see an MVS with fighters in it back in
I
the
think
day.
yeah,
I think Turf
and
Masters was incredibly rare. Are you sure it wasn't Top Player Golf?
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
I might be mixing those two up. One of those golf games is like insanely rare
I
and
don't know
expensive.
golf, so it was a golf game on
Yeah.
Neo Geo. I'll say that much.
Right.
I didn't play it.
It could have
just
been
go like,
maybe.
and
oh, it's
Maybe I'm
golf.
just thinking. I think maybe it's AES Turf Masters is a rare one. Maybe the MVS one's not as bad.
I don't know. And I remember seeing the bowling game, pretty often.
Yeah.
It was like Super Bowling. No, it wasn't Super, but whatever it was, right?
Yeah. I just remember it being like fairly uncommon to see a Neo Geo when I would go. Like, so we had an arcade in our mall called Timeout, and you know, I had a little skee ball area, had, you know, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, had Marvel Capcom games for a little bit, and it had, you know, like LA Gunners, like the big one you would stand on, and like the whole platform would vibrate, like
Nice.
stuff like that, and they had DDR. But I'm telling you, like every arcade I've ever been to, you know, and then there, for a little brief period, there was like Primal Rage and like whatever, like the hot, you know, kind of trendy game was for a little bit. But I'm telling you, like, you know, every arcade I can ever remember being in, there was like one Neo Geo cab just kind of like off on its own, and I'm like, well, I mean, if it like, you know, why is there always only one? You know, I'm like,
And you
why is there
never
never
played like
anybody at it?
the Super Nintendo Genesis like ports of these games either.
Never.
That's the crazy part to me.
Ju-
I
yeah,
didn't
just-
really see the arcade fighters either until I was much older.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, we grew up with like World Heroes and Samurai Showdown
We
and stuff.
Yeah, we were, it was like, I guess just like every friend I ever had, it was just like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and like we just never left that kind of comfort zone of those games. So yeah, never a single SNK 16-bit port was played either.
That's great. Yeah, and like I played in the arcades. I played lots of Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, Fighters History, King of Fighters, World Heroes. I mean, all those they were really popular. I mean, I don't know,
so
like people didn't line up to play them like they did the other ones, but they were just you could find them everywhere.
All right.
Um,
So maybe after we finish Mario World, we can go through like a little SNK back catalog re-education.
yeah,
Fun.
no, I'm sure at some point in time I want to talk Neo Geo. So
Oh yeah, foreshadowing.
mhm.
Yeah, that might be a thing. So cool. So is that anything else you've been playing, or does that wrap you up here?
That's pretty much it. I'm thinking about like, here's this part that I'm at, and I don't know. You guys could talk about this too, or at least I guess Kelsey can talk about it. PlayStation 5 hits like in a month, so I really don't know if I want to start anything up because I don't know if I have enough time to finish it.
Yeah, and it's funny you mention that because that kind of brings me into, you know, what I've been playing and kind of like where my habits have been going. Being a fairly regular Destiny player, you know, there's kind of like a cycle of like, you know, in the fall, like the big expansion comes out, and then a few months later, it's like, okay, like the next smaller, you know, seasonal content expansion comes out. 2 or 3 months later, another season. 2 or 3 months, another season, and then like the next fall, you have your next big expansion. So the Beyond Light expansion that was supposed to come out in September, like a week or two ago, like September 22nd or something like that, has been delayed to November 10th. At least I think it's November 10th. Maybe it's like the 12th or like somewhere thereabouts.
Just delayed till right when everything else is coming out this year.
Exactly.
Is it because
Right.
the series machines come out on the 10th?
I mean, if it is, they didn't say that explicitly. Like they just referenced you know, the pandemic and everybody at Bungie working from home and the struggles of, you know, game development working remotely. That's kind of what they said when they pushed it back. But getting back to like kind of my game habits, like when it kind of gets to like towards the end of like that yearly Destiny cycle, it's like, all right, I've kind of done all the stuff I'm gonna do. So now, and like they always try to do the same thing. Like in those last 2 or 3 months, they're like, oh, here's the, you know, kind of the last hurrah. Like here's the event where like you go back and you do the raids and you do this and you do this, and we'll give you, your armor will glow and everyone will know that you did it and stuff like that. And like the first time it happened, I did it, put all this work in, and then my armor glowed for like a day, and I'm like, that was dumb. That wasn't worth it. So now it's kind of like a, you know, fool me once situation. So now I don't do it anymore. At the end of the Destiny year, I'm like, all right, I'm done with Destiny till the new thing comes out. I'm gonna go, you know, play other stuff. But with everything kind of hitting, like whether it be, I'm not getting the new systems at launch, but Cyberpunk's coming out. You know, we got Destiny 2 expansions coming out, so like I kind of have that like month and a half, you know, that we're talking about of like, what can I get in there quick and, you know, get in, get out, you know, figure some stuff out. So like you said before, Chris, I try to jump in with Game Pass because you can find some things that are little and it's not going to cost you any money. I think I mentioned last time on the show that I was playing the Fractured But Whole, the South Park sequel
Yeah.
RPG. So not that I think that's going to be super fast, but it's like I feel like this story is like not like deep and complex enough that if I have to take a break from it, I'm not going to remember where I was in it. So like that's why I was okay starting it. But I started Oxenfree. It's been on my radar for a long time, and the playcast. I'm listening to like back episodes of the RF10 playcast, kind of going backwards through the catalog there, and they mentioned it a few times. And Sean mentioned it being like not just one of his game of the year, but like one of his top 10 all time. And I was like, you know what, it's time to go back and do that. So I started, played like the first 30 minutes, and then my house guest wanted to watch something on TV, so I had to pause it. But yeah, it's fantastic so far. The voice acting is great, the art style is great. The dialogue system's fantastic, where like it doesn't like stop the story and like make you choose a dialogue. It's like everything's kind of just like flowing. If you've played it, you know what I mean. It's kind of hard to describe, but dialogue is just happening, and you'll see these three dialogue choices that are kind of mapped to the three buttons, and there's no symbols or anything. It's just kind of like left, top, right. So it's like if whatever controller you're on, the left button, the top button, or the right button would correspond. And what's really cool is the game doesn't like stop and wait for you to choose something. Like the opportunity comes up where you can say something if you want, but if you don't say anything, like those opportunities just fade away, and it's like, yeah, that's how it would be. Like if you didn't say something, like the world wouldn't freeze and wait for you to choose. So really, really cool so far. I'm looking forward to continuing that. Um, and just like Chris, well, the kids will be like, "Oh, let's play something else." So we'll bring up all the Xbox Game Pass games, and we'll go through, and it's like, what's that? I don't know. Let's download it. So we downloaded Cluster Truck. Have you guys heard of or played Cluster Truck?
I've heard of it.
Heard
We
of
haven't
it,
played
I
it yet.
haven't.
No.
No.
So it's kind of like I don't know if you ever played this game that's available in regular and VR called Race the Sun or Race for the Sun or something like that. But it's just like a super, super, super fast, like kind of first person. Um, oh well, Cluster Truck is first person, but basically it's almost like a VR type simulation where like there's 18 wheelers, and imagine like the Matrix 2, right? Or sorry, the Matrix Reloaded, where like you're fighting on top of like trucks and like you're jumping between them and everything. So basically what's happening is there's all these trucks, like 18 wheelers kind of moving forward on the highway, and you're in first person, kind of mirror's edge like, and you have to like jump, you have to like parkour from like one truck to the next to the next to the next, kind of avoiding obstacles in the air and like things
Dodging
being
the
thrown
Pale
at you.
Twins.
Exactly, right? They're like a phasing in and out of reality in front of you, and then like you kind of make it to the finish line. And it's like, all right, like there's level one. So it starts off really easy, and then it starts getting like really really hectic. Like the trucks will be going at like 130 miles an hour, and you have like a rocket pack on, so you're going like it's super super fast, and it's kind of this weird like arcadey, like really really hilarious thing where like the kids are like blowing up and flying, like everywhere, and they're just laughing, right? They don't care if they get the level or not. They're just in the middle of this big silly simulation. But besides being kind of an attention grabbing name, it's pretty accurate the way that everything starts playing out. So recommended if you have Game Pass just to check that guy out real quick. Not super deep, but Cluster Truck was a fun time. I downloaded No Man's Sky after hearing comparisons to Destiny about, it came out, it kind of didn't live up to expectations. There was a lot of hype, a lot of stuff behind it. Oh, this is going to be another, next big like exclusive thing, and it's going to be awesome. And it kind of came out, and people were like done with it in like a week or two, and they're like, all right, I think I've kind of played this. So over the years, it's had tons of updates, mostly free, and I think a couple of like paid upgrades possibly. And I've heard from a lot of people that it's like a completely different game from when it first came out. So fired it up, gave it a try, and I'm not sure if it's for me, because it really is more of like a resource collection. Um, it's really like more mind like because I was thinking like, oh, maybe it is like Destiny, where it's kind of got that like that loot itch
Isn't
and
it
that
like
like
more exploration focused?
it's more like exploration and resource and just like you land and you got your little laser miner gun and say okay mine, it could be something any plant or whatever, but like, oh, it's carbon. Mine this, it's oxygen. Mine this, it's sodium. And you're pretty much just mining yellow, red, blue things. And once you get the yellow things, that powers your, it's like in Breath of the Wild where it's like, okay, it's cold protection. So here's environment protection for my suit. And then you get green. Okay, well this is stuff that I can craft this, and this is stuff that I can craft this. And I played it for a little while, and I just felt like I was like doing all these things in order to keep playing the game, right? Like I wasn't like doing them because they were fun or interesting. It was like, why do I do? It was like almost like a mobile game. Why do I have to press this button? Oh, this so that you can press that button again in a few
Hmm.
minutes. Like there wasn't any like more depth to me. So I watched a video. Like there was this like 55-minute, the perfect beginner guide for No Man's Sky in 2020, and I watched it for like 15, 20 minutes, and it was like exactly what I was thinking it was. And they're like, oh yeah, well this is this, and this is how you get a lot of this. Then you're gonna get to a space station, you can sell this, then you'll have money, then you can buy this, then you can buy this, and you buy this. And I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do all that stuff. So I'm glad I had the experience. I'm glad I jumped in. And I see what they're doing. Totally not for me, but if you love just collecting resources and clicking buttons, maybe give it a try. So in Destiny 2, I mentioned I kind of take a break from that. I did finally get Anarchy, which is the raid exotic from the Scourge of the Past raid, which is a very fun raid. The clanmates took me through that 4 times to get that, so that was very nice of them. Started cleaning out my vault in that game because I'm perpetually like, you have a max item limit of 500 in the vault, and I'm always at like 494. And then I'll like get stuff, and then I have to delete, and it's like, well, I don't want to get rid of everything because I like to have one of everything. But since they're sunsetting, nothing's gonna really it's kind of the equivalent of like a reset. So I deleted a bunch of stuff just to clear the vault out. I probably won't play it much before the expansion comes out in November though. Um, and of all things, so Chris, you mentioned the kids were playing Minecraft Dungeons. So my kids kind of got into it initially, and then kind of fell out of it fairly quickly. Like, okay, like we get it, but like whatever. But then they kind of started going back to it and back to it, and my older son realized, okay, like I'm leveling up and I'm getting stuff, and at first like they didn't know what they were doing with salvaging, pretty much like dismantling your weapons and armor for jewels that you could spend on other vendors in like your kind of like your hub, kind of like your home base. And then once I kind of explained a few things to him, and my older son is reading, so now he actually can kind of put some of the menus together. So he started to kind of understand kind of how it works, and he is to the point now in his young life where he will wake up in the morning, walk into the living room, turn on the Xbox, and just start playing video games, which was never really a thing before this last few months. So he'll just pop it on in the morning and just like play Cacti Canyon or whatever the swamp is called, and he's not really trying to grind. He's just like, okay, well, I'm only gonna have like 10 minutes to play, so I'm just gonna play a level and like we'll see what I get. And he's realized, the difficulty slider. If you do it at lower difficulty, the loot's not as good. If you do it at higher difficulty, you might die, but the loot could be better. So he's kind of figured these pieces out, and just in all this extra playing, now he takes me and his younger brother through Minecraft Dungeons, and I have noticed that I die, very easily because I'm a much lower level. But we get to the final button. He's like, "Oh, I want to take you to Obsidian Pinnacle, and we'll face the Arch Illager." And I'm
Oh,
like, "I
that
don't know." And
fight,
I'm and
man.
I'm like, "I don't know, dude. Like, I'm probably gonna die." And my 6-year-old carried me through this fight, and I'm dying. And he's like, "Oh, when that happened," and you're right, like, because and the thing is, I have no problem, you want to make the guy hard, that's fine. But like no boss battle before this
Yeah.
boss battle that I've seen has mechanics. Like it's just like there's a big guy in the middle, and he's got very very easy to he telegraphs his attacks very obviously. Like a big red circle will show up on the ground. Oh, there's going to be fire there in a minute, or things are falling from the sky
Huh.
and you can tell. But yeah, it's like he kind of like splits into like 4 people, and there's like this geometry that you have to realize, okay, he's going to shoot like there, so I need to be in this perfect spot. Or then there's like the pinwheel
Yep.
where it comes out and it's just like goes around, and I'm like, well, there's just no way to avoid that. And like kind of roll through it. Here, let me try. Oh, dead because it's one hit. So I definitely know what you're talking about. But just like my experience with it was, my son being, all the extra playing he's doing, maybe leveling up,
Yeah.
maybe getting
Yeah,
that
I'm
gear.
sure.
Yeah, so he figured his way through it, and now I'm like, okay, so are you done with that? And he's like, and I don't know the details, so I might be saying this wrong, but he's like, oh no, like there's like weekly challenges, and you can go in and there's like, so I guess there's like a featured,
Yeah.
world of the day or story of the week or whatever that you can go in and you might get a cool thing, and he likes finding items that are unique, and he's like, you want,
Oh
and
yeah.
we're playing, and he's like, Dad, you want to be like me? You got to get one of everything. So every time I get something that he doesn't have, we go back to the hub world, and there's a vendor there called the gift wrapper. And you go to the gift wrapper and you pay him jewels to give an item to another player. Which, like, I get it, but like it makes me think of other games like Borderlands where you can just drop an item, or Diablo when you can just drop an item. And this game, it's like it charges you an in-game currency, which is like I get it, so it makes you play the game to be able to do it, but like that's the kind of stuff where I feel like it's like right on the edge of like, that's kind of just a thing that should just be a thing, but whatever. But yeah, he like makes me give him all the unique drops that I get. So,
I think
and
that's probably a thing to keep when kids are playing online from somebody hogging all the items that they shouldn't take.
yeah, yeah, and they do have what do you call them? I forget the word they use in the game, but it's like a protected drop or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So it's like a drop just for one player, which is great.
Yep.
And I gotta tell you, it was actually really really sweet. Like, and sometimes I think he's pressing my buttons, but other times I think he's just a sweet kid. Where we get home from his swim class, and my other son's going to swim like an hour later, or like actually like right then for an hour, and he's like, "Daddy, we never get to play video games, just you and me." I'm like, "Oh, you little son of a gun! What do you want to play?" So we played some today. It was awesome. So, but yeah, so and my younger son, middle son actually, the only other one who plays video games, just randomly, like he plays the Switch here and there, and just randomly was like, "Dad, I want to play this game," and I'm like, "That's a really hard game." As I don't think, but it's weird because I said that for Axiom Verge, and he like played it for a while, like he couldn't really get far, but he enjoyed it when he played it. So he's like, "I want to play Zelda." So I'm like, "Dude, it's really difficult. It doesn't hold your hand, doesn't tell you a lot. You got to read a little bit. So whatever, we gave it to him, and he was just like playing Breath of the Wild for I don't know for how many days, how many hours like total, but we'd give it to him for 20, 30 minutes here and there, and he like on that initial plateau, right? Like because you don't have the paraglider to get off yet, so but he stuck with it and he kept bringing it to me and he's like, I think I gotta get there, but I'm not sure. And so I read to him like, oh yeah, you got to get these four, because the old man tells you can see the four shrines from the tower. So I mark them for him. He beat the first two shrines, and then the third one he kept dying trying to get to it. And I was like, oh, you need cold protection. So I showed him how to like cook spicy peppers. And now he's cooking. He's like, Dad, if you cook 2 of them, you get 5 minutes. You cook 3 of them, it's 7.5 minutes. So he's actually starting to put it together. And then he beat all 4. He's 5. He beat all 4 of the
Wow.
initial shrines. He got the paraglider, and now he's just like trying to find. And he's like, "You see that tower in the distance?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude." I show him the map, and I'm like, "Every one of these areas has its own tower." And he's like, "How many shrines do you think there are? Like 10?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, you have no idea. There's like dozens of shrines." He's like, "Dozens?" So
120.
yeah, he's really into it. So we're gonna keep letting him kind of have a crack at it. But if you told me 6 months ago that your 5-year-old's gonna get really into Breath of the Wild, I wouldn't have believed you. But he's into it, so we'll let him keep going for a little bit.
One that we popped in from Game Pass yesterday that they were tooling around with a little bit today. You might want to check it out because it's real simple and pretty easy and kind of funny. Is No Time to Explain. So
Okay.
I recommend you check that one out. It's like really the mechanics are base. It's like really short levels, like just don't die, get from here to there kind of thing. And you're just a guy that can barely jump, not real well, and he has like this giant laser cannon that can shoot and also like propel him like a rocket pack. So and the gimmick of the whole game is like for each level, like he has traveled from his future. It's like basically like, no time to explain. You just have to do this, and so you're like chasing. Anyway, I won't ruin it, but it's kind of fun.
No, yeah, I wrote it down. It sounds funny. It's funny because you say those words, and in the Destiny community, that's a meme, a big one from Destiny 1. It was kind of like they didn't really have all the story figured out. So there's this character called the Exo Stranger, and they show up very early in the game, and you're kind of like oh like well, your character doesn't talk, like the silent protagonist, right? So your ghost is talking to them like, oh, like what's happening, what's this, and the line that the character says is, I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Yeah.
And it kind of became a meme, and they're like, guys, this just means like we don't want to write the story right now, so we'll do it later.
It's like this,
and
that's kind of the gimmick with this game. Like you always are
Right.
seeing like your future self being like mangled by something. So and
Yep.
you know you just have these goofy quips per level, like "Oh my god, I didn't know I had this much blood," and so you're trying to get to this time portal for each little level.
Yeah.
So and they're like super bite sized, like a minute
Right.
per level
Okay.
or something like that.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. And then like later in the game, they actually they released they made I think it was an exotic pulse rifle called No Time to Explain, kind of like a self-deprecating quip at themselves. But so when you say No Time to Explain, that's where my brain goes. So yeah, so it sounds like we've all been playing some good stuff, having some good fun. So let's get through a little bit of news before getting to our main topic, which is lore. So Kelsey, what has been happening in the news that you are just bursting at the seams to talk about?
I thought one of you guys was going to bring it up, so since you didn't, I
got it on the
thought
outline.
we should mention
You took it.
Bethesda. No, I was the last one to put my news item in. But Microsoft purchased Bethesda since we last recorded, which is huge.
Yep, I feel like they purchased it because of our last recording. I mean, that's the way I see it. Anyway.
Major Nelson
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you keep that under wraps?
Yeah, because they have not been good, especially these last 6 months, for keeping anything under wraps.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like the Xbox
And remember,
S or whatever leaked, but they somehow kept this, private.
Yeah, we knew about that Xbox S for a year.
And even on the Bethesda side, like it was a couple E3s ago that like Fallout 76 was leaked 3 days before E3 or something like that. Like,
yeah,
how do you
that's
keep
true.
something this big.
And they joked about Walmart Canada, thanks to our partners at Walmart Canada for announcing this game for us.
Yeah.
Honestly,
because it's happened more than once.
That is the best way to take that on the chin. They didn't come out and pretend no one knew about it. They're like, we want to thank our partners at Walmart for helping us with this announcement. It was so good.
Well, wasn't it
because the
wasn't it
Microsoft
with this
Series X,
last one?
they were so bad at keeping that a secret that the literal trailer they were going to show started leaking, and people were showing the trailer they had planned to show.
But I think with this last leak with the Xbox One Series S or whatever, there was a tweet from from Walmart Canada where it was that wasn't us this time or whatever.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Walmart the Wendy's Twitter. There's a bunch of those that are actually run by some really really funny teams, but yeah, it's I don't know how you keep it a secret. I mean, as as a Microsoft guy, who and I've said before, I have nothing against Sony. I hope they do really well. I hope there's good competition because it's better when more people are doing well. But yeah, I mean, it's something that as a Microsoft guy and a PC gamer, that I think is a ground shaking revelation to think that there could be big if not exclusives, just things that are gonna help line the Microsoft war chest or however you want to call it. But
for someone who's not been a big Microsoft fan, it just feels like more of the same to me. Like they bought the things they're already good at, so it doesn't push me over there any more than it did before the announcement. Because I'm not a Fallout guy, I'm not a Skyrim guy. I still need to try Dishonored and Evil Within. Those are the two properties that Bethesda has that I haven't tried that I might have some interest in.
Like Doom,
right.
You can't forget Doom.
I've never played any Doom game. I'm just not a big FPS guy. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean that's a big.
It's a big deal for sure.
And good on them. And it's the right thing to do. I would not like it if they didn't do this. Where they said that we're going to honor the PS4, the Sony exclusivity on things that have already been announced, and we're not going to pull because that'd be kind of like pulling a fast one. But and they talked about everyone's big question is what's the exclusivity going to look like going forward? And they're like, well, it's going to be on a case by case basis. So
yeah, we
when you look at other things. Yeah, so when you look at other things that Microsoft owns, like Minecraft, which is the big one, it's on everything. They're cool with it being, cross-play, as much as the other, partners will allow. So, and I think we've talked about before that not Skyrim, but Elder Scrolls 6, seems like it's, so far out, like at least like 2-3 years out. So I don't know if that's really going to be like a soon announcement, but yeah, it was definitely a big one.
My hunch is they'll still let Sony have like the Fallout 76 and the Elder Scrolls Online kind of games, but they might start keeping like Elder Scrolls and Starfield and Doom and stuff for themselves.
Yeah, I would think at the least you'll get like a 1 year type deal, where like you'll see it on other platforms,
Sure.
like kind of like what was it like you've seen before, and it wasn't a Microsoft property, but like Mass Effect, like
Yeah,
you
they did it with
kn-
Tomb Raider last gen as well.
yeah,
I,
yeah, so a handful.
I think they want to sell Game Pass. That's all Microsoft cares about right now, and
Yeah.
that's a big reason why they bought this stuff. And I think,
Before this purchase, I like Game Pass was just like, oh, that's cute. They'll have their niche. Like it never jumped out to me, but with this Bethesda thing, like that's huge for Game Pass, and I don't like it one bit. I don't like where I think Game Pass is going to go in a couple of years, and I wasn't really worried about it before because I didn't see it like really taking off, but I think this could help it take off and push further where I'm uncomfortable with.
Microsoft wants to be the Netflix of gaming. They want to sell services. They don't give a crap about boxes and discs.
Yeah, and with them joining with EA recently too, like they're
Just got
pushing
that
hard
email,
to get
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So,
really with that and this Xbox All Access where you can get the Game Pass and the machine and all that like in one monthly payment. I mean, for a lot of people, I imagine that's a pretty hard to resist.
Yeah, and people are so
Proposition.
comfortable with that from doing cell phones for the last decade that I don't think that'll be hard to get people interested in.
No, big news.
Yeah,
Pretty interesting.
big one. So yeah, what do you got, Chris?
So nothing quite that earth-shattering, but a couple things I would just bring up kind of quickly is I was kind of surprised to see that Demon's Souls is getting a special edition that's only digital, and it's more expensive than the $70. So, again, I go back to like, you don't save any money on digital. I don't buy the machine with the disc drive. I don't,
And when they do those like special editions and they give you like digital like armor and items and stuff, they're never good things. They're not things you want to play the whole game with. I don't understand the appeal of them.
No, and I looked at it, and I think most of these things are just going to be things you would normally be able to get in the game anyway. So it's like, you get them early. Okay, you can start off a little overpowered, but
I've always felt this way, regardless of platform, about pre-order bonuses. And all it's just like a tiny little thing to push you over the edge in pre-order, right? So it's like these little incentives, and like I used to hate them. Like, you used to sell them and tell people like, oh, if you pre-order you get like a golden skateboard with like silver bearings and the real, it's like. And in Destiny, I'm a little biased because like Sony and Activision for a while had that partnership where like Sony would get exclusive weapons, exclusive exotics, exclusive missions, exclusive strikes, and it would always say like, oh, it's exclusive for a period no shorter than 18 months or something like that. Then the 18 months would roll around and they're like, okay, yeah, like it's going to be like in the next expansion, whatever. And then when they finally went like independent, they were like, we're not doing that crap anymore because that was forced on us. They didn't say that, but that's what they meant. But yeah, like like the Sony guys would always look at you with the little friendly ribbing like, oh, what's it like not having these weapons or not having these strikes? And I'm like, well, what's it like them being bad? Like no, no one uses them because they're not going to give some of the players the best things in the game, right? So here's just a throwaway thing, right? So, but yeah, I hate stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really bother me a whole lot. I wouldn't buy the digital edition anyway, but I just thought it was a weird move, but whatever. The things I saw was that, I don't know, it might even be too late now if you want one, but they made MVS versions of the Neo SD Pro, so if you're looking for a flash cart for MVS now, or maybe it was your time, because I think they said this is going to be a one-shot deal. They were going to do it once, and that was it. So if you wanted a MVS flash cart, I hope you got one, or get one very, very soon. And then the last thing is Street Fighter League is getting ready to kick up. So they've been doing preseason for a little while, and preseason is now over. So I believe starting next week. The U.S. Street Fighter League kicks off. Japan Street Fighter League kicked off last week, so it's been going on. So it's nice that when we don't have a lot of tourneys and stuff that can happen anymore, that we've still got some stuff to watch, and it's been done, I think, safely, but still fun to get some of these players in a space, playing some games, having the commentary. So far, they've been doing some tourneys online, but this is, actually live, but again, done safely. And so I was watching, like, for example, earlier, before we got on this call, I didn't get all the way through it, but I was watching the first week of the Japan Street Fighter League, and they just do a great job with the production. It's really well done. If you don't know Japanese, it's all subtitled, and they make a really good production out of it. They make it pretty fun to watch. So, yeah, if you're in Street Fighter League, it's time.
What about just a casual person who enjoys Street Fighter now and then? Is it still worth watching, or is it kind of like just the hardcore would appreciate
No,
it?
I think if you watched, I wouldn't recommend, that the casual person probably watch the Japanese stream, because, you have the reading of the subtitles over the top of everything else. You wouldn't probably it wouldn't be as easy to pick things up. But I'd say, yeah, go watch the regular U.S. Street Fighter League play, because they know the audience for that, and they know that it's not all hardcore people, so they do take the time to, like, break some things down and talk about things for people that may be newer to those kinds of games. And they also have the commentary that's good for people that really know their stuff. So, yeah.
I really like that when they do it at like GDQ, where there's obviously people watching the games that like aren't experts in that game. So like a lot of times it's either the speedrunner or the person on the couch. If the person playing has to concentrate, like, oh, what he's doing here is this and this and this, and I find that stuff so interesting. So that would kind of be a style that I'd enjoy watching on the Street Fighter side.
I was just watching some of this year's SGDQ while I was making dinner today. I was watching someone run Legacy of the Wizard, and the couch made that like really interesting, because like I've played through that game, but they're doing all these things I didn't know were possible, and it's just nuts how they can like manipulate it, and they're kind of explaining how they manipulate things.
Yeah,
fascinating.
It's over and over again. Every time I watch speedrunners, like the number one differentiator between like your regular casual player and like the speedrunner in the type of game that I play is movement. A lot of people say like reaction speed has a lot to do with that, but I'm telling you, like the way that these guys are able to manipulate someone through these environments, it is unreal to me that the human can have that type of ability on some of these guys that speed run, especially some of these old Half-Life games where like they have to like kind of stick themselves on a door, and as soon as the door opens, they have to like reverse like backwards rubber band boomerang jump around this.
I
and go
can't even
upstairs
watch
and stuff.
speedruns of Portal because I don't understand what's happening, because
Yeah.
I'm like, how does your brain work this way? Like, it's just nuts.
I watched. There's a Twitch streamer called Dishrag that I've recently found out about. She's really really good, and she does these speed runs, and she doesn't talk a whole lot over them. So a lot of times people ask questions like, "What did you do at like 35 minutes?" And then she'll go back and make a video. She'll take the stream, she'll put it in slow mo, and she's like, "This is what I did." I'm like, "But how did you do those four things at the same time?" Like it's crazy. So yeah, so some Street Fighter action, so that's cool. I got a couple just small things, and then we'll get to the main topic.
Small, you got like the biggest one of the week here.
I did want to mention, I have to mention, right? NHL 94 Rewind has been announced as it's not completely clear, but it's been announced. Here's the trailer for it. You get this mode for free when you pre-order NHL 21. So it's basically like full-on 16-bit graphics for like kind of like NHL. They've like NHL 94ified the modern teams and rosters, so you can play as the current players and the current teams. So they've added the Vegas Golden Knights and the new Winnipeg logo and all that kind of stuff. So you get to play it in the 16-bit style on your modern console. So it's not really been clear, because they said you get this free when you pre-order NHL 21. They haven't said is this a standalone thing that you can buy by itself for $5? Is it a downloadable mode and you still need NHL 21 to play it? So like they haven't really said that. But we've seen what it looks like. It looks awesome. The NHL series tried this a number of years ago. I don't remember what year it was. It was like NHL 11 or 14, I can't remember, where they did it was announced like an NHL 94 mode, and everyone thought this is going to be what it is. Like, oh, 16-bit graphics is going to be great. But all they did was like make the controls simple. So you have 3-button controls like pass, shoot, speed burst. And it's like, oh, well, but it still looks like, modern. So this is like this is kind of like going like that full in the Wayback Machine. So definitely a really cool thing to do. Definitely going to be on my list of things to grab this holiday season, because as much as I love hockey, paying $60 for anything at retail is not something I do. There's going to be a sale on this thing, in the holiday times. There's always sales in sports games, and with EA, doing that partnership with the Game Pass, you never know, it might show up on there, and then maybe just play it for a little bit.
Even with what you know right now, if this is only a pre-order incentive, it's the only way to get it. You're still not.
Nope.
Not biting.
Not doing it. Zero. I have a Genesis. I'd rather, so it's, but like it gets back to what I said before of like, I don't want to like feed the troll of pre-order, incentives, so I'd rather, if this is the only way to get it, not getting it. I don't agree with that practice. But it's a really,
guns, I like it.
Yeah, but it's a really cool thing that I think it'd be silly if they don't just have this as a standalone thing. It's hard for me to think they could price this thing as a standalone over $5, and I feel like $5 is a decent little thing to throw in for a pre-order.
I feel like they could sell it for 10 with no issues.
Maybe. I mean, maybe that's just my brain is back in, like, I remember back when I could buy Symphony of the Night for like $8-10, on like Xbox Live Arcade back when 360 was new. So sometimes my brain is kind of in the old pricing ways.
With everything jumping $10 for next gen too, I think you'll see some other jumps as well like that.
Yeah, it might be. And like we said, when Episode 1 Racer was coming out on Switch, I was like, oh, like I would grab that for $5, and then it came out and it's like, oh, it's not $5, so it's
more normal on the Switch though too, that things have a little premium to them.
That little tax, yeah, exactly. And one more thing I wanted to mention, even though it's not news, it's just a rumor, but it's been picking up like a little bit of speed, even though Bungie's CEO Pete Parsons has said this is multiple not true. Times. But a handful of times it's come out in the news like, okay, Microsoft might be trying to reacquire Bungie. And there's been a handful of like very circumstantial, pieces of evidence, not evidence, but like circumstantial things that are like, well, if they were trying to acquire them, this would happen, and those things have happened. But they're not just like Pete Parsons is like, this is not real, like at all. But then after he said that, they went back and like whenever a company acquires someone, another company, they're required to bring on an officer to like oversee that, and that has happened. So I'm not a business person. I can't read those documents and figure out if they're real or not, but a bunch of employees at Bungie have tweeted it, and they're like, I don't know why you guys think this is real. This is not real, but it's picked up a little bit of traction recently, so just wanted to mention it. I personally have no opinion on that. I'm gonna, Bungie's gonna make the game they're gonna make.
It's like Bethesda for me. Like, I know it's a big deal to so many people. It's the same kind of stuff they already have and are good at that doesn't interest me.
And the thing too is like it'd be different if like they were acquiring, if Microsoft was speaking of Bethesda, it'd be different if like they were acquiring like like Insomniac or like Naughty Dog, like something that it's like, oh, they don't have the people that do this, but like it's like they had Skyrim before and they still have Skyrim. It's okay, well, I mean, like we had it, and now we still have it, so like yeah, it's. Well, I mean, I think it's a very much like we'll wait and see where it goes type thing. But I mean, as far as the Bungie thing, Bungie was owned by Microsoft, and then they weren't owned by Microsoft, and then they were owned by Activision, and then they weren't.
Do you think the rumors are just like people frustrated with the last few Halos, and they just really want those teams to like converge again, and they're kind of looking for things that might not be there?
It's possible. I mean, like the world is full of conspiracy theories, and people who want to believe in them and who want the clicks and want the stories. It's hard to say, but I don't know why people seem to need to push things, the news into a direction that they want it to go, or to see if they can drudge something up. But
is Bungie just Destiny? Like, do they have other games that I'm just not aware of?
Modern Bungie, so Bungie who makes Destiny right now, has received a large amount of money from a Chinese company uh, and I don't get into the business side of things, but I know they've received like a enormous amount of money from a Chinese company to as an investment. So like they don't like own them; they have to like pay them back um, to develop a new property. So everyone kind of knows behind the scenes that Bungie is working on a new IP, and no one really knows what it is, or a new property, or a new something. For a while, people were thinking, like it's a Chinese company, it might be a mobile app, it might be something kind of out of the realm of gaming, but uh, but yeah, there's nothing else on Bungie's like official calendar game-wise besides Destiny, and that it was kind of a question mark coming into the end of the summer of like, okay, is this going to be the end of Destiny 2 and are we going to Destiny 3? So when they came in, they were like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of like retire some of the content in Destiny 2. We might bring it back here or there. It's going to shrink the install size of Destiny from like 110 gigs down to like 40 gigs because the game was just growing and growing and growing over the years. So that's kind of cool that the footprint will kind of shrink and become easier to manage and easier to patch. But with them coming out this year and saying, here's the major expansion for this year, here's the major expansion for next year, and here's the major expansion for the year after that, we know we have like 3 more full years of Destiny happening. Beyond that, we know nothing. So once they kind of announced that plan, people were like, okay, well, it's possible that they're planning this new IP to launch, towards the end of that cycle, so that they can kind of transition into it. But I mean, Destiny is a huge moneymaker for them, and I don't think you walk away from that. So whatever else
Yeah.
they're working on, I think it's going to be a
I don't
branching
I don't
path
really see
where
the appeal to Microsoft either if it's not like a stable of IPs, or if there's like, wouldn't you rather just spend a couple $100,000 and like poach some lead designers or something rather than buy the whole
right.
company?
Yeah, it seems weird. And the weird thing is like people have tried to poach Destiny employees before, and a few have left for projects that haven't been announced yet. So like they were Destiny guys and now they're like their Twitter handle is like, oh, like lead designer at unannounced or to be, determined. But their lead raid guy, Joe, uh, his Twitter is Jogaroth, but that's not his last name. It's a pun on one of the Destiny raid boss names. But this guy was their lead raid designer, and he left earlier this year, and he went to Riot, who makes League of Legends.
Yeah.
And we were kind of a lot of people were kind of surprised, like, oh, like why would Joe leave Destiny? He's done like all the best raids, and he's great, and everyone loves him, and he's a big MMO guy. He loves WoW. He loves League of Legends. So he left and he went there. But it was also kind of around the time that it had broken that like maybe the work conditions at Riot maybe weren't the best, especially for women. So it was kind of weird that he was kind of going there and going to this company that was kind of in hot water for stuff. And I don't know how long it was. Maybe it was like 4 or 5 months, maybe six tops. And then he tweets, he's like, well, it was a fun adventure. It was a cool detour. I am coming back to Bungie. So don't know what happened, why he left there, but there's been a handful of guys who have done that where like they kind of pop out and they're like, oh, this isn't like Bungie, and then they go back to Bungie. So um, it's it might be one of those things that like if you have a stable work environment that people are treated well, that people like coming to work, they like doing what they do, not like not to throw shade, but like not like a Ubisoft or a Rockstar or a Riot that just has overflowing amounts of complaints and reports of not being
That's
treated well and
neat management too that are willing to like hire them back after, like, no hard feelings, like trust
yeah.
them, like we've got a good thing, we know you'll see it if you go try something else. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, well, that's a good point because a lot of times, like you're like, hey, listen, I've enjoyed my time here. I need to take this opportunity. I could imagine some bosses being like, all right, peace out, and then you come back to them and you're like, listen,
Yeah.
I had the experience. I see what's going on. I really, I realize what we had here. I think I want to come back here, and I can imagine the bosses being like, nope, you're
Yeah,
done.
either that or like start at the bottom again, like one of those two. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So but yeah, so I mean, by all accounts, like, and Pete Parsons too. Like, I mean, obviously, I don't know the guy's the CEO of Bungie, but from all accounts of what you hear from like Bungie employees, like, I don't know what anyone's politics are, but like he's there in Seattle and he's out like in the streets like with the protests, like like giving people water,
Okay,
like
I remember
like
seeing that.
helping
Yeah.
out. Yeah, he's always been a real active guy in whatever his community, has told him that they're passionate about. So he's gone out and I think done a really good job with a lot of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, so back to the original, like it's totally a rumor. Like most rumors, it's probably not true. But just the fact that it's come up a handful of times in the past, month or two, I just thought it was worth a mention.
I think that's probably because I think Microsoft has basically said that they're still possibly looking to acquire it. So,
yeah,
but I've heard the same
yeah.
thing about like, oh, maybe they'll scoop up a Capcom or a Sega Atlas or
Yeah.
Sega I've seen pop up a couple times recently.
So I would imagine it would be behoove them to look at a Japanese studio since they're on this track. It wouldn't surprise me at all at this point with their focus on Game Pass. So if they pulled up a Capcom or I would think a Sega would be a bigger deal because of Atlas.
That would be a huge deal. That's like got tons and tons of properties. Like they got Yakuza's really big now. They got Sonic, Persona, all the Shin Megami stuff is huge in Japan still.
It'd be an expensive get, but
oh, big time.
But they bought Bethesda, so whatever.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see. I don't think they're done.
No, yeah. I forget who did the tweet. It might have been Schreier, but I think he said I forget how long ago, but he was like, Microsoft's biggest problem is like exclusivity or like games that you can't get anywhere else. And then he tweeted, he retweeted that tweet, and he was like, Microsoft has acquired 17 studios since I made this tweet or something like that. Because when you figure in, all kind of the sub guys and all the other teams, because what's the
Bethesda? They acquired 9 different studios or something out of that.
What's the Dishonored team?
I can't remember. Because they got Bethesda, they got id, they got Arcane, they got
Arcane. Yep.
Yeah. They're
Every time I hear Arcane, I think Arkham. Oh no, it's Rocksteady. So. So yeah, so like I said, we'll wait and see about that. So with that, all that stuff out of the way, let's move it on to the main topic here. Pause for a little musical interlude. If Krabby wants to put some Lamb of God in there. So for our main topic, we're going to talk about lore. This is something that we've talked about for a little while, kind of behind the scenes. We'd like to talk about some lore. It's kind of a big, broad, topic. It's hard to kind of zero in because, obviously lore, stories or fiction or, science fiction or even historical fiction. It's so broad. It can go in so many different directions. So it's kind of always been hard for us to kind of hone in and figure out how to focus it. So we've come up with a handful of questions and kind of topics to kind of go down the rabbit holes that we want to go down. And so we just wanted to start off by talking about the difference between story and lore. When you just talk on the surface, most games with just the smallest amount of narrative will have some kind of story. A dinosaur guy kidnaps princess, you must go save princess. That's the story, and then the lore is the deeper, things behind that. What is this kingdom's history? What is the language that they speak? What's the language that they used to speak? Do these people interact with these people? Why don't they? What's the history behind that? So that's kind of the, peeling the layers of the onion back. So, kind of the first question I wanted to pose to the guys here, growing up, how aware were you of the lore within a game that wasn't based on a known property like a Star Wars or a Batman or something that you kind of knew about the story going in? Was that something that when you decided a game you were going to play, you had any idea of the, kind of the lore, the world that you were getting into?
I mean, back in the day for me, the only lore you were probably going to get was from the instruction manual. I mean,
that counts.
You would read that Zelda instruction manual from cover to cover a few times
Absolutely.
to understand the basics. You didn't get a lot, but it was interesting. I mean, you were curious, where did Ganon come from, and how did he get here, and
illustrations in that manual were fantastic.
Yeah, it was really well done. Yeah, you're like, okay, well, Hyrule, what's the story there, right? Other than just Pigman steals princess, and it's
Yeah.
and now you got a sword, go get her.
Yeah.
Um,
Or from like, letting the start screen just go a little bit
yeah,
longer, and then, you kind of get your Star Wars, scrolling story that way. But yeah.
or like Super Mario Brothers, where you'd read the manual and learn like, oh, all these bricks are people, and I'm breaking them all the time. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do
Yeah.
that, but I get points.
Right. So when you're talking about the manual, you're going back to like Atari and NES mainly when you talk about where you're going to get your lore from
Mo-
Yeah,
when you were playing as a
mostly.
kid.
I was gonna say
Yes.
my neighbor had an Atari growing up, and I think my first introduction to like lore outside of the game was the Yars Revenge manual that he had on his TV, because it like gave a whole backstory to this game, and I'd like maybe Pitfall and Adventure, you could get some lore from, but other than that, like Atari games weren't really
Atari had
deep in-
comics though. There were some comics that went along with some of their games that you would get with
Yeah.
it, and like Yar's Revenge and stuff that would tell a little story.
yeah, that was fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, at the beginning there wasn't a lot. You'd read Nintendo Power or Fun Club News, and you would get a little trickle of more information. But it just there wasn't a lot to get. There wasn't a place to get it from.
Right. So yeah, go ahead, Kelsey.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like you mentioned the opening scrolls, and I think the first one of those that really got me was Mario 2. I don't remember getting into the lore of Mario 1, but 2, like having that like subcon and this whole different world, but it's the same characters that I knew, so it seemed like they existed in different parts of the universe, kind of thing, which made it more interesting to me.
Maybe because it was different universes.
I didn't know that as a kid.
Right. And sometimes I think ignorance is bliss with that, because being a kid, like just Mario 2,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It wasn't for years later before you found out, oh, the business behind it, no, it was too hard, and we made this one, and like it was just like, and I remember in my head thinking, wow, like Mario 2 is really different from Mario 1, and then I also remember thinking, yeah, but Zelda 2 Adventure of Link
Was really
is
different.
really different
Yeah.
from Zelda, so I was like, yeah, it still could be the same thing. So yeah, like I remember we've talked about before that I played a lot of Mario on the NES as a kid, and I you kind of knew the story because you're going after the princess, but like I had zero additional knowledge of like kind of the kingdom we were in, and does someone rule it, and is there a king and stuff like that. And Zelda was probably the first time I became aware that I was in a world that was bigger than just you're a guy, go beat this level and then beat the next one and beat the next one, then you're done with the game. I remember that scroll was like really important to me, like it went up. And I remember also beyond the story, it would kind of come up and it was like, here's all like the power ups and the artifacts, and like here's like the power bracelet, and here's the whistle and this. And I remember thinking, man, there's so much in this game that I've played it for a ton, I haven't scratched the surface yet, right? And you'd ask your cousins, have you beaten it? Like, oh, where's the second temple? Oh, you got to go down here and over there. And it's funny because when I was looking up for this show, the definition of lore, it's often referred to as like the stories that are passed down, like often by word of mouth, or by like finding kind of like fragments of writings or artifacts or things. So it's cool that like we're trying to figure out the lore of this world by word of mouth, but kind of before the internet, like you would get so much information from like like people you knew, or like other gamers, or you call 1-900 Nintendo tips with your parents' permission. But yeah, Zelda for me was definitely the first time I became aware of a deeper story, within a game beyond just kind of playing through the levels, like I said. So, do you guys remember the first game where you realized like, wow, the lore is way deeper than I expected it to be?
Deeper
Might
than I
be
expected to be.
Mortal Kombat for me, just as a series, because like Chris mentioned earlier when he was talking about Samurai Showdown, like there was these secrets and you weren't sure if they were real, and then as the games progressed, like you'd find out like, oh, those were real, and now that's a part of the main story, and now there's this new secret, and how does Noob Sabat fit in here, and Reptile, and then they become playable characters, and I remember talking about those a lot at recess, like trying to figure out like who's related to who, and are these guys allies or enemies, and which was weird because very little of that is like flat out told to you in the games. Like you just kind of figure it out as the games kept coming out.
It's funny you mentioned fight because I just in researching for the show I never really think of fighting games being like lore based, but like now that you say that, I remember just being like glued to the screen if I was in the arcade and somebody was about to beat Street Fighter, because I'm like, oh, I haven't seen his ending yet,
Yeah.
and like that's what gave you like some of the because you like one fighter could be okay, like, well, you get a little bit of motivation from like the win text, like and then you get a little bit from like where they're from and some of these just like little snippets, but then like the ending is like, okay, I've finally done what I set out to do. Now I'm gonna go home, or now I'm gonna see my mom, or now I'm gonna go back to my family, or now I'm gonna continue for the next fight, and like
Yeah.
it gives you this extra piece, and that's a really good one. Looking at fighting games like that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, because
Street
I
Fighter
don't remember
2.
when I figured out Chung Li was like a secret agent and it was like a revenge mission and stuff, but that's like really cool and like that's not instantly knowable.
Bison killed her dad, and like the whole famous Jimmy, and Blanca finds his mom, and it's like, oh, he's a lost jungle kid. That makes sense, right?
I could not believe that they actually like got that in the movie too. Oh, that was so cool.
Let's not bring up the movie.
Maybe hey, I got it on Laserdisc, and we will watch it again the next time.
What day was it for you, Bill?
The best day of my life. But I remember this is not a what do you call it? A common one that people really talk about, but I remember Mortal Kombat 4, and like it came out, and I remember was it 3 or 4? I think it was 3. No, it was 4. And this was what's the guy's name? Rico or Reiko, however you say that.
I pretty much stopped at 3, so I don't know.
I remember, I think it was Rico.
4 was Quan Chi, right? Had Quan Chi on the
side.
Yeah.
Rich, my boy, Rich DeVizio. I got his autograph on my Mortal Kombat machine. So, but yeah, he was this character, and he kind of had like, remember like the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, the wrestlers? Yes. Had like those like, or Ultimate Warrior had like face, those like the face paint on. So he's just like kind of like a red, outfit, and like his face is exposed, and he's got white eyes, and he's got like paint on him. And I remember I was at my friend Tad's house in high school, and we would like play video games all night. That was where his house was where we beat Metal Gear Solid for the first time. It was amazing. So we got Mortal Kombat 4, and we figured out this cheese where we could just like beat anybody. You would just run up to him, and like you could like change the plane you were on, right? Like walk up or down. So we'd like run up to someone, like change the plane, roundhouse kick would hit like every time on like so we with the same move, like we just like over and over again, because YouTube didn't exist. We wanted to see the endings for like each character. So we went through like each character like one night and just like beat the game on cheesing it and like watched the ending. And to this day it's like one of the most like shook I've ever been, like when I watched an ending for something. So you beat the final guy, Quan Chi, and then you're like the ending is right there. Like you're just done fighting, and you're in your fighting stance, and you kind of relax, and then you just kind of like slowly like walk like up, like off of where you're kind of like been fighting onto this platform, and you sit down, and you morph. And it turns out this guy that you've been fighting as the entire time is not just this random dude who just showed up in Mortal Kombat 4, but you are Shao Kahn.
Ah, okay.
And it just, and now you're Shao Kahn, and then like over, credits roll. And I just remember being like, oh! So yeah, it's so cool to bring up fighting games, just that level of like, oh, I wonder what the story is, behind this character, because you just don't want to have like a, face like a character without a backstory that you can kind of get into.
Yeah.
Did he tell you you suck when he?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's I love that about Mortal Kombat.
That's
like,
so
you
good.
suck.
Yeah. That was amazing. I think I mentioned before, we used to get dropped off at the movie theater to play Ultimate MK3, and we would like read in magazines how to do all the moves and stuff, and then we would go to, get dropped off at the theater and just like play the game there. But oh man, he was infuriating to play
Oh yeah.
against. Talk about like just the arcade machine cheating. And it's funny as you get older, and like I've acquired a handful of arcade machines, and you look at the difficulty setting dip switches,
Yeah.
and there are difficulties on there where it's like, just don't let the player win the first round ever. On. You know,
Pretty much.
do- doesn't matter if you take all his health down. You are not. And you've done that before, right? Where like you're like hitting Mike Tyson. You're like, why isn't he dying? Why isn't he doing it? Well, it's built into the game. So yeah, that's funny. So kind of got like the basics and kind of some intro stuff out of the way. So I thought we'd each talk about a couple of games that have just well-known lore that people kind of know for the not just the story, but like the world that they kind of come in. So if we want to kind of go through, we'll do one each, and we'll kind of go through like that. So if we want to start with Kelsey, what do you got for us?
Sure. So one that I remember being aware of there being a broader world, but not really experiencing it, was when I played the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games. So they're part of like this Forgotten Realms, like D&D kind of world. So there's like shared places in beyond like Dark Alliance, like in the old Baldur's Gates and Icewind Dales and stuff. Like there's moments and characters and locations that exist beyond each game, but they're all linked together, like kind of superficially through the stories. So that was a really formative one for me, just to see that like these games exist beyond just themselves. Because like prior to that, especially the role-playing games, it was mostly like Final Fantasies for me probably, and they don't really link together between games for the most part. Like they have those tropes, like you'll see chocobos and a Cid and a Moogle and stuff, but it wasn't like they all had like the same locations and events that people knew about from game to game to game. So that was really neat to see like this persistent lore, like that existed beyond genres even.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a really, really good one. And I remember working at Babbage's and seeing these games come out and just thinking, that there wasn't a connection. But then you would always see that, D&D stamp, or like, that it was like from this universe or from this world. And then as you kind of got into a few of them, it's like, oh, like these guys know about those guys? Like, how do they know about that? Oh, because it's, they would know because it's a D&D game.
You'd hear about a certain tribe or race like mentioned in one game, and then like 5 years later you'd be playing a different related game and it's those lizard men I remember hearing about.
Very cool. All right, Chris, what do you got?
I mean, you guys can probably guess where I'm going to start, but
yeah, I'm happy to go there.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably that's what it gets known for, Dark Souls, or for a lot of the FromSoft games. So I'll just say Dark Souls because it's probably the biggest known one, and that is there's a gigantic backstory to that game, and honestly, if you just play the game straight and don't look for it, you won't know it, and you won't get hardly any of it.
I did. Like, that's how I play games, and I remember, like, picking up little pieces, but I didn't know what happened, and I was talking to you after, and you're like, well, there's, an evil Framp, and there's, like, the queen's not really the queen, and I'm like, how do you know all this stuff? And you're explaining it to me, and there's so much depth there that you can easily miss in those games.
Yeah, everything is parceled out to you in very small pieces, mostly through item descriptions, and a lot of these items, if you don't bother to take the time to find them even in the first place, you would never even get the information. So it really pays you to dig in, find everything, and piece it all together from all these little morsels. Because usually with each item piece, I mean, you'll get a description, this is what the item does, and then here's this tiny little nugget of information that we're going to give you. And then once you start piecing all these little nuggets of information together, you start, okay, wait a minute. Like the game is never going to tell you straight out about what happened, to Gwen's kids and why Anor Londo is the way it is, and who Ornstein and Smo are. I mean, you would just like, oh, these are just guys I have to kill. If you didn't pay any attention, that's all you would know. These guys have a thing I want. I got to kill them. Whatever. Yep. You wouldn't understand why you get to Gwendolyn after that either. You'd probably like, just whatever. Okay, here's a big chick. She's gonna give me a thing, and away I go. And you would probably think, like I think Kelson, when we talked, that Frampt was telling you the truth, and you should just do everything that he tells you to do because that's what games do. There's a guy that tells you go do this thing, and you do it, and he goes, "Good job," but you can find out that, well, I mean, he's got his own agenda, and so what he's telling you is good for him and what he wants to get accomplished. But is it the truth? Not exactly. And that's kind of what I like is that where it really just puts you in this place in this world. Your character is a significant piece of it, but really it is not the prime mover of any of this stuff, right?
Right.
You're just a pawn in the game, and how much time do you want to spend learning about the game, right? And that's what lore is all about.
And the way you described it right there is like my like exact definition of what kind of lore is to me is it doesn't tell you. Like you can't jump into, like a thing and then say, okay, like, well, what happened here? Well, you can't say what happened with this queen because all you have are like fragments and like little pieces that you picked up from a weapon or from a book or you heard from this guy, but he has an alliance to this guy, so can you actually trust him because this record over here contradicts it? And at first it's like infuriating because you just want to find out what happened, but then as you kind of get deeper into it, you start to realize like these webs are kind of created this way on purpose to make it like a hole that you gotta kind of dig down into. And then you start watching, like YouTube lore series and try to get more into it, and it's like, but yeah, that's exactly. And when I first started playing Destiny 1 years ago, I was like, there's no story here, there's nothing, because you just get in there and it's like, there's a story, there's the deepest like world I've ever found, but it's not told in cutscenes, and it's not told in like level 1, level 2, here it is, like the world is there, you have to dig through those pieces to find those stories, and it's unreal. That's a good one. I mean, and we definitely knew you were going Dark Souls. I think you know where I'm going in the future, but I'm going to start somewhere different but related, and I'm going to say the Halo series. And not just because it's Bungie and I like them, and not just because Halo was a big game, but it kind of transcends what some of the other like sci-fi games, like there's other like big successful sci-fi shooters that don't kind of have this level of kind of like story and world building with the Master Chief, with the humans, with the Flood, with the Covenant, with kind of the history of Reach and the fall of Reach, and like like we haven't talked about books a whole lot yet, but where you have uh, the stories of these games that get put into fiction that gets released in paperbacks, and there's actually more than a few Halo books out there, but it's one of these worlds that and a lot of times with these sci-fi shooters, like I don't mean to name one that just randomly, but like something like Resistance, that like when the PlayStation 3 was around, it's like, oh, like here's a really good sci-fi first-person shooter, and it just it's one of those things that like it could be a great game, but like there's nothing that kind of scratches underneath that surface. It just kind of like ends up fading away, and like people don't talk about Resistance 20 years later. You know what I mean? It's great at the time, and then it kind of goes away. And what was always kind of great about Halo was how, and Bungie's, this is always what I think Bungie does really well, is they make you feel very, very small in a very big world. So if you get into a place and like even like Doom doesn't do a great job of this in the early games. Like you get in and you're kind of in a small room and you walk over here and you go over there and you go through a corridor, but then when you kind of it opens up and you realize you're in like a much much bigger place, uh, when you land on the ring and you're like, okay, like I'm on this little, kind of green grassy plateau, but then you kind of look up and you realize, man, this is like unlike anything we've ever been on, and you immediately want to know, what is this? Why am I here? Why is this thing a ring world? Why are we shot down? Who are these aliens? And like every time you go deeper, like there's an answer. And even though the game does kind of take you through that level 1 through level 10, it has the deeper lore there if you want to dig for it. I kind of fell out of the lore for Halo around the time like Halo 3 came out. But yeah, it just it keeps going. Like there's, like I said, there's books, there's comics, there's there's all sorts of stuff. But yeah, Halo's one that I think is kind of one that people know that there's like a deeper world to discover down there.
Yeah, I would similarly echo. I mean, kind of coming back to the same, but like in the series, Dark Souls 3 does a really good job of making you feel very small in places, because as you start progressing into the story, there are these little set pieces that are in there that make you go, "Oh crap!" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, is anything that you're doing even worthwhile?
Yeah.
And does it matter?
And just when you hesitate there, like the most infuriating thing about sharing lore with people who aren't like into the property is that you can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't get, and I found this out the hard way when I tried to share Krabby. I was like, Krabby, here's like the history of like Oryx the Taken King, like the Destiny history starts from nothing. And I
You
watched
sent
this
me a
and
4-hour video.
Oh wow!
and yeah, but I was like, you can like, because it's like chunks, right? So you can do 20 minutes, and that's like chapter one. You have 10 minutes, there's chapter two. Or if you just want to learn about like the Maracena, that's like at this timestamp. And he was like, I found it really, really, really difficult to get engaged or to stay engaged because I had kind of like no reference of like like who these people were, what I was doing,
Yeah.
and I could imagine feeling the same way if I came in, because you like the Destiny timeline starts like eons ago, and then you come in here, and then you come in here and you start going forward in the timeline, and you realize what has happened before and why you're doing things. So to start eons ago in like the literal like primordial ooze of this planet when it first like starts developing, it's hard to get someone in there and realize this is how far back it goes, and there's a reason for everything here. And it's even talking to Chris when Chris was walking me through playing Dark Souls the first time, we get to a place and he's like, okay, now look up there. He's like, that's the world you're in. You're gonna get to go there later. And he always said to me, look at what the world's telling you, And it's like the hardest thing about telling someone how amazing the lore is like you kind of have to experience it, and it kind of has to hook you. So the way it hooks me is not the same way it might hook you. So it's one of those things that's really difficult to kind of express to someone else, especially when you love it like that.
Like, yeah, because
So
I played Destiny with you for that one afternoon, and you're like giving me the tour, and you're like, oh, this is this guy's name, and this is why he's here, and these are the things he could do for you. And I'm like, I'm trying really hard to like remember this stuff, and then we go to the next guy, and everything you told me about the previous guy was just like gone instantly.
Yep.
And then like we played, and I could see the gameplay appeal of the game, but like none of the lore was like sinking in. And then when I tried to watch that video, I think I watched like somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour of it.
Oh wow,
It
was a bit.
it was like listening to Latin. Like I didn't understand. Like most of the words I could understand, but in the way they were arranged, it just wasn't making sense to me. And I was getting really confused very easily listening to it, just because I didn't have a frame of reference for like any of it.
Yeah, and when you came back to me with that, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, like because if I hadn't gone through the Taken King and done the raid and known who Oryx is, and because basically where that starts is like the birth of Oryx, and you don't know it's Oryx yet for a little bit in, but like when that revelation hits in the story, I'm like, oh my god, this is Oryx, this is where he came from. But like you have zero frame of reference for like why that's important or relevant or anything. So yeah, and which makes you appreciate how difficult it is to write the story of a world and bring people in at the right point where they're engaged, but there's a history of this world that they can't know yet, but they might know later. Like I can't imagine what it's like to craft that world. And they talk about that. They're like, like we're world builders or we're world crafters. I can't imagine what it must be like to be someone who's like part of a team was able to do that.
It's such a unique way of telling stories, like to gaming too. Like you can't tell a movie that way or a book that way. Like it's really, really interesting.
Right. Yeah, you have to walk someone through it, especially like network TV, where like you have to appeal to like as many people as possible. You can't leave anybody out because they'll turn it off. So I brought up Halo, and then so Kelsey, we're back to you, I think.
I'm gonna go a little lighter and sillier with mine. Another fairly early one for me was the Donkey Kong Country games. Just having that, like, is Cranky Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., or is Donkey Kong Jr.? And I remember having those like forum debates back in the day, like when I was first getting online, like trying to figure out like who's related to who, and how does the timeline work. And I know like Nintendo doesn't have like strict timelines for this stuff. They don't really overthink it out, but it was weird like having like people like pull out like Super Mario Kart as like part of this timeline to like figure out where Donkey Kong Jr. fit into it. And these old Atari and arcade games, they're trying to like link into the modern stuff. And
I could just imagine you on like donkeyKong.geocities.com.
Yeah, arguing that Funky Kong is the true progenitor of the Donkey Kong series.
Oh, that's great. I know, and that's one of those things that I don't really think about, but like, like Donkey Kong Country, like you jump in and there's relationships there and there's a world there, and like it's, even though you're right, it is lighter, it still is, like that lore behind that world.
Yeah, it was mostly about the lineage that really jumped out to me about that game, not necessarily like the world building. Like I didn't care about Kong Island and the Kremlins and all that kind of stuff. It was just like, how does everyone relate to everyone else? And is there a timeline here that, and I know Zelda's got like that super messy, like, isn't there a timeline, and does it fracture at certain points? And
I remember, what was it, the what's the name of that book? Is it the Dark Horse book?
The Hyrule Historia?
Yes, the Historia, because I think I heard about like, the Hyrule Historia has the timeline, and then like I got it, and like I think I looked at it for a minute, and I was like, it's almost like a magician telling you what the secret is. Like I'd rather not know. I'd rather it be like opaque.
Even when they put something like that out, I'm pretty sure like within months of that, like Shigeru Miyamoto's like, there's no timeline.
Rips it apart. Yeah, it's like whatever. If somebody just wrote that down, it's not official or whatever. So yeah. And just this morning, just redoing the story of Breath of the Wild with Cameron, and it's like King Rome. I hope I'm saying that right. King Rome, kind of at the beginning, telling you like, spoiler alert, like, oh, I'm the old man and I was the king and you were the knight and you're the Shrine of Resurrection. Here you are, and it's hard for my brain not to think, okay, so when is this? Like, 'cause I've always kind of thought of the Zelda games as kind of like this like timeless story of like like a young man, saving a princess, from a calamity, or from, like a monster or whatever. I've always kind of thought of it as like different interpretations of the same story.
That's kind of how I took it too. I was really surprised how much people like debate there being a timeline, and they're very strict about it in some cases.
Yeah. I'd rather there not be. I'd rather there be, like this is how one person sees, it going, or this is another person's interpretation kind of deal. But yeah, that's a cool one. I did not expect Donkey Kong Country to come up. That's fun. All right, Chris. Besides Dark Souls, are there any other games that strike the lore tickle bone for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna get into a different one. I do want to throw in real quick thing as kind of with this, and I won't spend much time on it, but I do really like in Sekiro how there's all this backstory that you can find because it has this mechanic where you can shimmy along walls. And there's all these story pieces where if you shimmy or like kind of hide behind a wall at the right time, you can hear all these conversations you wouldn't normally hear. It's like you're eavesdropping. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's really, otherwise it's very similar to the other FromSoft games. But I really thought that was a cool mechanic. But no, I would go next with Dragon Age. Dragon Age pick. Is this really well done series that has pretty deep lore. I mean, even in the first game, you kind of learn like, who are you? Well, there's these evil creatures that live underground, and they kind of come up, and normally we can kind of keep them in check, but every so often, like they have these archdemons or whatever that come up and are going to take over. Well, who protects us? Well, we have these Grey Wardens, and so you get to become a Grey Warden, and you get to find out like, well, how do you become a Grey Warden? Well, you drink the blood of one of these things, and a lot of them die. And if you don't die, now you're a Grey Warden, but you're kind of cursed, right? But now you have the ability to take on. But like that's just the story of the first game. It's still always the series that goes through, but like the first story is about the Grey Wardens, and you're one of them, and there's this huge piece to it. Like there's the Dwarven Kingdom, and there's the elves, and how they were treated. Because like these elves a lot of times were like slaves, and things in these worlds. And then, Dragon Age 2 goes a very different direction with the story. It's more of like this one like family in this one kingdom and kind of what's going on. You still get some more pieces of the world at large, but it's almost like a side story. But anyway, I mean, they keep going with things, but BioWare does a great job of that, and there's some books that go along with it too, but they've really done a fantastic job of crafting this Tolkien-esque world that's not just like a ripoff of The Hobbit or something, right?
Right.
They've created their own version of this thing, and it all flows and works really well.
Yeah, I was a little bit late to the Dragon Age party. Dragon Age is awesome. I've heard conflicting things about Dragon Age 2, that it's good, but like it kind of takes place in like the same like one or two locations. And I've heard Inquisition is way better than people give it credit. That people generally give it credit. But yeah, I remember being really, really surprised at how good Dragon Age was. And a lot of times the decisions in games are like, do you want to be good or do you want to be evil? And it's like, all right, well, like, do I want to, like save the family, or do I want to like murder their children for two generations? It's like, these, who would so, but Dragon Age was the first time I remember there being these shades of gray, where I actually had to put the controller down and kind of pace a little bit and like, man, what am I going to do here? Like, I don't want to let this guy in. Like this guy is no good.
Yeah.
But I,
And there's some story
and
elements that you can choose some pretty whacked out paths and get some
mhm,
very interesting things that happen. Like, I don't want to ruin it if anybody that's played it, but there's this big
mhm,
choice you get towards the end of the first game that if you make this other
yeah,
choice, I think all your other characters is like, what kind of monster
yeah,
are you?
yeah,
And like even like kind
yeah.
of
It's
treat you
like
different.
the Bethesda, like everyone disliked this comes up.
Yeah, but like from that point on, there's like relationships that break. I mean,
Yeah.
those decisions actually mean something in that
Yeah,
game.
and I remember having similar things in Mass Effect where, like, not to spoil it, but it is a pretty old game, where the was it the Genophage
Yeah,
that like wiped out like the
yeah,
Krogans, and then there was like this like like kind of conflict between like you and like another like, and like you had to have like enough like influence to be able to like stop this, but like there are major consequences for for taking things one way or taking or not taking them another. But
yeah.
those are both BioWare games, obviously. So
Well, and Dragon
I feel
Age
like
and Mass Effect both, they have like these built into the game. They have these huge like codex things that you can go into and you
mm,
can read about
yes,
oh, I want to learn more about this. And then it's just going to give you all this information about like here's this race or here's the
hmm,
history of this place or whatever it is, and you can really
right.
dig into a lot of lore if you want it.
Yeah, and you reminded me of that because I remember in Mass Effect being in the Citadel and you go talk to like that big like weird slow elephant looking creature and he talks really slow and he's like okay, and then like you go in the Codex and it's like this whole like encyclopedia entry on like, oh, like this is what these things are and this is why they're really
The
slow, and they like
Elcor,
have like
yeah.
and yeah, the Elcor, and they have like telepathic communication, but they also can talk. But like, it's so cool to be able to jump in and do that. It reminded me of like the Civipedia. But yeah, it's so cool to have that. I've actually thought a lot about Mass Effect lately. I should replay that. So not to get too far off topic, but yeah, Dragon Age is also a very, very good one. We've already mentioned this game a few times, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. But as far as games with well-known lore, Legend of Zelda, it's probably don't need to say too much more because it's already come up a handful of times. But that kind of timeless story of like your young. I mean, I don't really want to say like your warrior, but like it's kind of like a young boy or like a young knight or a young man in a lot of these stories, who's kind of thrust into this role of we need you to help us, and a lot of times he's like, well, me? You know, like it's a lot. It's not anything you say. Oh, I've trained my whole life for this. It's always like, okay, like I'll do my best. I've only got 3 hearts, but like maybe I can get some more. So but yeah, and it's one of those things that kind of like everyone who plays games, even if you haven't played a ton of Zelda, okay, you know there's Link and the princess and there's Ganon, and I'm gonna have to go, kind of save this. And like you brought up super early, Chris, I'm glad you did with the manual, the Legend of Zelda manual, and the also the included map was big help into kind of understanding where you were starting in that game, and yeah, just they've done a phenomenal job, kind of like with their interpretations over the years, and I think a lot about Wind Waker and how they kind of like circle it like really early. I'm kind of like like how does this even fit in, and then eventually they kind of like circle back around, and just the way that they can always kind of trick me into like, oh, I see what they were doing. Or I just think about Skyward Sword, and I think about like all these different times they've kind of like brought the story around. But again, I don't see them as being all connected. I don't need them to be connected. I prefer them to kind of be like opaquely, weirdly, kind of maybe tangentially related, kind of through like a thread here or there. So, gotta talk about Legend of Zelda. So, Kelsey, so you're gonna close us out with so we started with the Baldur's Gate. We got the Donkey Kong Country. Was there one or two more that you wanted to mention before we move on?
Yeah, I'll kind of mush two together to make it quicker. But two that really hit me right around the same time was the first couple Diablo games and the first few Resident Evil games, kind of for the same reasons. Like they both had the wicked like atmosphere to them, and they told you a very coherent story. But beyond that story, they both had the lore like sprinkled in on top of that to like go deeper if you want. You want to find out like how did the butcher become the butcher? Like you can talk to Deckard and he'll give you a little tidbit. You talk to the blacksmith, he'll give you a little tidbit, and you kind of piece together what everybody's saying to figure out what happened to this person. Same thing with Resident Evil. Like you're picking up these little notes that are like found throughout the game, little memos, little love letters and stuff, and they kind of make people that you hear about but haven't met, or people that you have met, like a lot more fleshed out, and the world just feels a lot more lived in, because like Resident Evil, like you run into very few human beings to talk to in those games. Like there's usually like 5 or less, and the rest are all your zombies and monsters and stuff. So it's neat to have personality when there's not a person there to like just blatantly have that personality. And I felt that from both of those games, like really strongly, kind of made them feel bigger than they actually were when you look at them. Which was neat back then because they didn't have the ability to have a world like Mass Effect or Dragon Age. Like they had to figure out other ways to make the world interesting and the characters interesting.
Very cool. No, it's interesting you mentioned Diablo, especially because we got together with Bickman probably a few months ago by this point, and had some Diablo times, which it's crazy to just be able to jump on Battle.net and just play Diablo in 2020 and it works.
Yeah,
we had to like update it and like
fairly
get the
painless.
the yeah, and then it's definitely been a long time, and you guys definitely played more Diablo than me back in the day, so it was more a thing my brother played, and I would kind of like jump in with him here and there. But I remember jumping back in and just like, I mentioned this a few times while playing it, just the creepiness of the atmosphere and especially the music. I remember saying like, no game sounds like this.
Yeah,
like,
that town theme, like in the first one especially, is so creepy and just weird.
Yeah, nothing feels like it's going in a good direction. Like, even though like you're okay, like I'm getting more powerful and we're killing stuff, like it doesn't feel like there's any good news on the horizon when you're in that town. But yeah, that's a great pair. So yeah, same thing, Chris. Was there a couple more you wanted to round it out with? Games that you think are well known for their lore?
Yeah, I would have to go with Elder Scrolls games. There's so much lore to those games that in fact there are like literal books in the game that you can read. I mean, that tell you stories and backstories and history, and I mean you can, and they're not just like a book or two. I mean there's like tons of them that you can read literally in the game. Oh, off a bookshelf and just plop.
I remember my father-in-law telling me that. Like, it's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm playing, Fallout. I'm reading this book. You're reading a book about Fallout. It's like, no, I'm reading a book in Fallout.
Yeah. Yeah, and so obviously you get a lot through your character interactions and talking to the individuals and going through the story itself. But if you want to know about the world, I mean, it's like it's there, and if you want to sit down and dig into all of it, and obviously the games are all related, and you kind of build on this as you go through the series. But it just amazes me that they just decide, like, nah, we're just literally going to write books and just stick them in there. So if you want to build your own little library in your house and know all the stuff, you can totally do that. And did I do that? Yeah. Like when I'd find a new book in like Skyrim, oh yeah, I'm taking that and then I'm going to go back to my house and it's going to go on the shelf and I'm going to have a library of all the books.
Were you a book reader in your Elder Scrolls
Yeah,
games?
and even though like whatever's the one
Really?
like oh man, like there's like this body tale, right? Like about like this handmade or whatever. I can't remember the name of it now, but there's like even kind of silly, goofy books in there. So yeah, it's just kind of fun, that because again, like in those games, you could do whatever you want, and especially like in Skyrim, they had like build a house, and you have a house, and you could make it so you would build like your own place, and so yeah, I would do. I like set up. Oh, here's my little lab station over here, and yeah, here's my bookshelf, and every time I come across some new books, I'm gonna stick them over here. So if I want to go read them, they're over there. So yeah. A lot of fun.
And that was the Hearthstone update, right?
Yeah, there was an update, where you could
build your house and get your display cases and your expansions. And I remember getting it, and I'm like, oh, guys, just build stuff, right? And they're like, well, you got to go find nails and hinges and stuff. So
it was pretty in depth. But man, talk about content. Oh man, no wonder they keep reissuing Skyrim because there's just so much content.
Right. I remember just like trying to play it in a way where I was just scouring every location, like get everything from this area. I would go into like a dungeon and I would get everything in there, and then I would leave. And sometimes you would get like that little like check mark or it says cleared, right? You would go into a thing and it says cleared, and then I would leave and I go back and it didn't say that. And I'm like, well, what am I missing in here? Like I was trying to like clear out the whole map, and I was driving myself crazy with that. It was like, yeah, I just have to play it. I just have to have fun. Right, so like I would, as long as I was having fun while I was playing. But yeah, man, it's crazy how you can dump a couple hundred hours into that game and just kind of go down the rabbit holes you want to go down, and then realize I haven't been in this like quadrant of the map, like ever.
And they even
it's crazy.
Incentivize you in that game a little bit to open the books because there's those one special books that you can open up that gives you a skill point when you open it. So it's kind of like, hey, you should check all the books.
You'll see like and it won't always have an easy name like intro to lockpicking,
right?
But it'll be like Gary in the curious case of the the lock that just would not open or something, and then like you'll open it and it's like +1 lock. You're like, yes, got it. So yeah, they do kind of push you to doing those things, but yeah, man, Elder Scrolls for sure. That's definitely a good one. So I guess I'm going to finish it up with one that I'll kind of pull out, out of the side of the hat. It's one that I give a lot of credit to for linking these games together that I didn't think had anything to do with each other. I thought they were completely separate. And then the revelation that happens at the end of this game, you realize, oh my God, these are the same thing. Is the BioShock series. So with your first game, BioShock, and BioShock 2, even though made by another team, is still in the same universe. And then BioShock Infinite comes out. So BioShock has this incredibly rich and compelling story of it's almost like an alternate history, right? A revisionist history where, okay, what if it went this way? And then, so Andrew Ryan, who obviously is, well, maybe not obviously. He kind of Andrew Ryan, Ayn Rand. Like there's some definite kind of philosophy similarities and some kind of pushing your brain in that direction. Where he's like, okay, we're just gonna go and like make our own city. It's gonna be under the ocean, and that happens, and you kind of come in like after the downfall of it. Like it's already kind of gone to hell, and you got to go in and figure it out. And there's this really cool kind of story within there, and then you kind of like it's going to be fairly spoiler free, but if you haven't played it, just don't listen and or cover your ears. But you kind of find out, certain people, like Chris was saying before with Dark Souls, like maybe this guy shouldn't be trusted. Maybe he's got an ulterior, like thing to do, and then and there's choices within there where you can save the little sisters or kind of harvest the little sisters, which makes a little bit of a difference in the ending, but it's not like huge, kind of canon or story wise. Then BioShock 2 comes out, which is kind of a little bit more of the same. But then BioShock Infinite comes out, and this is the team that did the original BioShock. This is Irrational. This is Ken Levine. And they never really say anything. People are like, oh, is this, the same series? And they're like, oh, well, it's, kind of, it's like same concept, right? So it's this guy, Father Comstock, who has put this, city into the sky. Which I don't know when people started the Skyoshock pun, but
I've
I
never
approve.
heard that before, actually.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's because it wasn't like I remember not hearing that like super early on, but then like after people it had been around for a while, people were like, oh yeah, Skyoshock, it's Bioshock up in the sky. So but it's Father Comstock, and he does kind of the same thing. Only he's more of like a religious figure than Andrew Ryan was. Andrew Ryan was more of like a business figure, kind of went that direction. So now it's this, we're gonna have this utopia up in the sky, and it was different because instead of coming in like after it had gone to hell, you kind of come in right before it goes to hell. So like everything is still going good, it's cool, and you get to kind of see the downfall and experience it. And then there's a young woman there who you rescue, and now it's like a kind of a buddy cop drama happening. But then there's also this like political struggle with like racial tensions and stuff like that, and it's this huge like when you look at it as like okay, it's like a shooter, and you go up to this utopia in the sky, and you gotta like kill the bad guy. But there's so many layers and so many pieces, and then when you add in the Lutesses, the twins, who are a whole nother like story to themselves, where they're doing these experiments, and there's things about like rips through time, and then there's it. This is supposed to be like in the past, but there's like girls just want to have fun is like playing on the radio, and like people know who like the Beatles are, and it's like this really weird kind of half world. And then what they do in like the biggest coolest like a shock ending that I've ever seen, that I'll try not to spoil too much, at the end of this story that really culminates in a really super awesome way, they link it back to the first game, where you're like, not only is this like related to BioShock, like this is completely the same story. Like they're one and the same. And I remember just being done with that game and just having goosebumps all over and sitting down, and I went to my wife and I was like, I need to tell you everything that just happened in my life right now, and it's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And Irrational kind of ended up breaking up, and people kind of went in different places. But I'm telling you, for as long as I will be gaming, I I I will be telling people how amazing the experience is of playing through and digging deeper into the story of BioShock and BioShock Infinite. And there's not as much in the form of like readings, but you've got the audio diaries. Obviously, you've got like people's like offices that you can kind of go into. You've got the audio conversations of the Lutesses, uh, all these different characters that you kind of meet, and you can kind of piece these things together. And a lot of it is when you find out the revelation at the end of the game, you kind of go back and you realize like, oh yeah, like that makes sense because of this and because of this that I saw here and this that I saw here. And it's just unbelievable. And sometimes I wonder if people who've, that sometimes they come out with these like, remasters and redos, and we've done this, and like come play it again. And sometimes I forget, like those games were a long time ago, right? Like there are gamers kind of come up who've probably never played, or some of them never even heard of a BioShock, and it's so worth your time if you're like a story hound or a lore hound. So worth it. So I'm going with BioShock to kind of finish it out there. You guys agree, disagree? Were you equally shocked by BioShock,
Well, I
or?
think, people can actually go back and listen to our spoiler cast episode that we did years ago and get our
Yeah, and
takes.
Colin, that's right. Colin, we had Colin on that show, I think, buddy up from
Yeah,
Buffalo.
I think we made Krabby play it, and he did it, right?
I've played all three of them, and then I replayed the first one when the Playcast did it. They didn't hit me like they're hitting Bill, but I'm really I like hearing Bill talk about it because he's like pulling out stuff that just I had a hard time with the lore in those games because of the gameplay getting in the way for me. I was always like trying to listen to an audio log, but like someone's shooting at me, so I'm not picking up things. I'm lost all the time, so I'm like just I got really frustrated with them because I wasn't getting any of the story in, and I knew that people really like the story of these games. And so I didn't pick up half of what I was supposed to, and so those kind of revelations didn't mean much to me because I missed all the things that pointed to them, like leading up to them kind of thing. And I think that a big part of that's just I'm not super familiar with first-person shooters. If I'm more comfortable with those, I think I would have had a better time. And just that way of storytelling was pretty new to me at the time, too. I'm used to, like, play this part, put the controller down, watch my 3-minute cutscene that I earned, and then, pick the controller back up. So that's when I was learning that there was different ways to, like, tell stories in games, and I wasn't quite used to it yet.
When you talk about trying to listen to an audio log and not being able to because you're getting shot at, that is Borderlands for me. And not that it has like a super deep story, but there's a lot of audio going on, and not always in the form of something that you can pick up and press play to listen to. You might like enter an area, like an arena, and someone kind of comes in on your comms, and it's like, the boss of the area. He's like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna do this," and like, you hear like a back and forth conversation between him and another guy. But as this is happening, since you've stepped into an arena, there's like things exploding and like, guns going off, and like I can't hear what they're saying, and it's not repeatable because it's just like a live, thing that's happening. So yeah, I've definitely had that
like,
frustration.
I think I mentioned it. I can't remember if it was on this one or the Playcast, but like that Andrew Ryan moment at the end of the first game, the "Would you kindly" like revelation. Yeah, I was like, I guess he said that. Like, I don't remember that being part of this game.
I remember, and maybe it was because I played the demo. I played the beginning of BioShock maybe like 10, 15 times, like when I just had the demo. And I remember, distinctly, like, "Would you kindly pick up the wrench? Would you kindly," and they kind of give you like a little bit of a flashback, like when it happens, just to kind of like, bring your memory back.
I needed that. Like, I know how people complain when like movies like explain the like twist to people. Like, it's like in that game, in that moment, I was the person who needed that they put that in for.
Right. Good stuff. So yeah, so that's that kind of gets us through like we brought some games that have some lore that people know about. I thought it'd be cool to bring up one or two games that have lore that people may not know how cool it is, how deep the rabbit hole goes. So with this one, how about we start with Chris this time? What do people not know just how good that lore is?
Oh, geez. I had kind of a hard time thinking of this one. I guess it's probably not as much, but I think in conjunction with the game getting ready to get re-released, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised if they sink the time into Demon Souls at how deep the lore really is in that one. And you're going to say, well, it's a FromSoft game. Yeah. But I think not a lot of people played Demon Souls, and also was probably really easy to miss a lot of stuff in that one. So with this update, I'm going to be curious to see if they modify that to try to make it a little more blatant, or if they just leave it like into that under the surface there if you want to. But I think, if you're going to be playing Demon Souls coming up, spend the time, do the look. You'll enjoy it. It doesn't stand out, but it's there, and it is very interesting to kind of figure out why the things are the way they are and why you're there. The other thing that I would probably mention is kind of, it's almost, I wouldn't say it's lore per se, but like if you play through the No More Heroes games, like the story that bleeds through all of those things, I think does a pretty good job of kind of catching you at times. And I don't know if I would call it lore. It's not really that deep.
Right.
But the character and the characters, like even some of them make return appearances in the games and things. So it's just fun. And so you get to know the characters, and it's pretty wacky in a lot of places, but it's Suda.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Kelsey, what do people just not know how good that lore is?
I think people underestimate how good the lore is in Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal.
Ooh,
Yeah, the early batch of them is just wackier than it seems at first because they seem like serious, like in your face, like extreme, like just kill everybody, but they're really silly. Like when you get to the endings of a lot of these characters, Calypso is supposed to grant them a wish, and whatever their wish is, he's got to give them for winning this tournament. But it's like the monkey paw thing, like everyone's wish kind of comes true, but they're like twisted versions of them, and they're often there's a couple that are like deadly serious, but most of them are like done in a silly way. Like Warthog wants eternal youth, so he literally makes him into a baby. Spectre is this like he's like the Johnny Cage of the game. Like he wants everyone to see his face, and he thinks that means be famous. So he literally stretches his face over the entire planet, so his like face is the sky. Like there's a lot of really stupid ones, but they're charming and they're silly and they're fun. And then when they like did the reboot on the PS2, and they go Twisted Metal Black, they're like, let's scrap all the goofy campy stuff out of here and let's make it like super serious. And then the game I have a hard time with because it's not mechanically as good as the other ones, I think, but the lore is really neat where it's really dark and you're like trying to figure out like who locked Dollface's like face up and why is she like that, and everyone starts in this like insane asylum, and so you're kind of figuring out why everyone is there and which ones deserve to be there and which ones maybe are in there not through legal means and stuff. And can Calypso, and because he's not as supernatural in this version, it's like, is he able to grant these wishes that these people want? Like he finds ways to fulfill them that aren't twisted in a supernatural sense. They're just like, yeah, I kind of gave you what you want in a realistic sense, but did you really want what you asked for, kind of thing? So I thought those games are really cool across the board, and I think they don't really get any attention for their lore. They get attention for other reasons.
it's a really good one. I remember you talking about that on when you were talking about. I think you were saying on another show that you went back and played with a friend, and you couldn't believe how well they held up.
My son hates it. I played it with my son. Yeah, I was like,
Okay.
I'm still loving this. It's so good. And he's like, I can't tell what anything on the screen is. This looks terrible.
Oh, good deal. Yeah, so I'll be honest. Twisted Metal might be the first thing I ever played on a PlayStation, but I didn't play a ton of it. Like I was at my cousin's house and he had like I had known his house for having like a Sega CD and Sewer Shark and FIFA 94 for the Sega CD, and he had got this PlayStation and we booted it up and I played Twisted Metal a little bit. I was like, oh, this is cool, but like I played it just a little bit, and I remember it was the first thing I played in the PlayStation, and I had some friends who ended up getting into it like kind of around like like middle school, maybe high school, and played a bit, but never owned it. Never played it myself, so I never kind of had that itch that a lot of, or sorry, the nostalgia that a lot of people have for it. But it was that like quintessential like PlayStation franchise for me, like the first one I remember. And I've actually heard people say that like the story goes deeper than you would think, because you would just think they would like slap a coat of paint on a character and like that's the
Yeah,
character
no,
and just figure out what they are.
Two, I think, is the most popular one, and like the mid boss in two, Minion, is like the winner from the previous tournament, and so they like start linking the games together too. So there is, even though everyone has their own separate ending, there's a canon ending that like runs through the games, kind of thing. Yeah.
Very cool. So, I think we all, just like we knew that, Chris was going to come in with the FromSoft world. I think everyone knows where I'm going with this. Even though I do think that by this point, there's enough talk about the world of Destiny and the lore of Destiny that people know how deep it goes. It never ceases to amaze me when they'll like take it like a step further, and then like us like within the Destiny community will get to kind of like go down these kind of like story kind of paths, and kind of get to see some backstory, like somebody will get resurrected or we'll get to go down a new timeline, which is a fairly recent thing. Or they'll kind of like close up a story loop for the first, like we've had storylines going forever, and the running joke was like like all Destiny ever does is like create new story lines, but like they never close any. So we've had a handful closed, to kind of like tie up some loose ends. But I'm telling you, like sometimes I just look at the visual timeline of Destiny just to get like a basic, representation of like where we are, where we came from. It is just massive, and any single like line on one of those things could be like 30, 40, 50 minutes of kind of like studying up on like the different things that kind of point to the different areas. And uh, I I've only taken a handful of people kind of through like those like intro story beats of Destiny, and I always say the same thing. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna like overload someone with like way too much stuff because it doesn't matter, like they're just trying to like, shoot some guys and like, we can worry about it later. But it's hard not to get caught up in that world, like when I'm introducing someone to Zavala or Drifter or, like any one of these characters that like really like is really important to the story and goes back really far. But I think about it if someone was introducing that to me, you know, it's just it all comes in as kind of garbled mess, and like you just want to kind of play the game. So it really is, I think, best enjoyed in like small doses, and you can kind of go down those story beats and those rabbit holes if you want to. But it's really really hard to describe just how deep that lore goes without just being kind of immersed in that world and then seeing where they take it. And it's varied. It's not just like, here's an alien planet, here's a bad guy, and here's the backstory. Like, it's dimensional and it's existential, and there's religious overtones, and there's technological, and there's social, and it's amazing how all these things kind of like wrap up together. So um, yeah, it's something that I talk about a lot. I'm passionate about it. The story is unbelievable. The lore is even better. But yeah, the world of Destiny is an incredibly deep and varied source of lore that it's hard for me to imagine anything else matching for me in terms of kind of what it does like imagination wise and just kind of like seeing where they're going to be taking it. So we knew I was going there and I went there, so probably not a big surprise. So
Thanks for keeping it under 4 hours for me.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I expect you to watch the rest of it and get back to me with your book report. Before we wrap up, I thought it'd be cool to kind of go over one or two games that people think that you're a great big nerd if you're really into the lore. And I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna call out some of our MMO fans out there, even though I'm kind of into a shooter MMO, and that's World of Warcraft. Whenever I would be at a party or just like hanging out with people, I never played the game, but you would kind of find like two people would kind of like mention kind of a thing from that world, and they would kind of be like, look at each other like, do you? Do you play? Yeah, do you? And then they would talk about, oh, what about the time of the Mathazar did this? And they went to find the enchanted sunglasses of Hut, and like, just they go down this like kind of like a path that like, we probably all sound like when we talk about stuff that we like, but I just remember, kind of those stories coming out, and it's like, all right, nerd alert over here. We got a couple of WoW fans, but yeah, that's and I think Rich has sworn off MMOs because he feels he put too much time and money into World of Warcraft, and I think our buddy Will
Yeah,
is a WoW
yeah. I
guy.
think him and Pam both
Yeah.
played, but yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
My
So we'll have
my buddy
see
who
if they take
bought
issue.
my store is one of the guys who has those trophies for the 10-year uninterrupted subscriptions. And he met his wife on there, and he's from Australia, and she's from Canada here with me. And he
Oh,
moved
wow.
here to marry her based on their relationship in
Wow.
that game, and they've been together for a decade now. And
It's
yeah,
amazing.
it's big
It's
into
it's
Warcraft.
it's funny the little side stories for Warcraft, but like the South Park episode, the World of Warcraft episode that a lot of people cite as like one of the best ones. Trey was like having like a breakdown like before they were gonna send it to Comedy Central. He was like, I think this is like one of the worst things we've ever done. He was like super nervous about it. He thought it was stupid, and it ends up being like one of the best episodes like ever. But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned like people like meeting in video games. I've heard more than a few stories of people like meeting through WoW and then like getting married. I've like a friend of two of my friends who play WoW. They were in the clan together. I met them at PAX a couple of years ago. I was like, how'd you guys meet? They're like, in the WoW clan. And now we're married. So It's crazy. It's where love forms in World of Warcraft. So yep. So that's all started out with WoW. So what do you think, Chris? Any who where are
Man,
the
I
nerds at?
just admitted a minute ago to reading books in a video game. So I mean,
They live at your
I'm
house.
not throwing any stones. I live in the glass house. So that's all I got to say.
All right, so Chris's answer is Elder Scrolls nerds are the nerds who love the lore. And Kelsey, who are the big nerds?
So I've got a friend who like basically only just plays JRPGs. So he's a guy that I meet up with to play like Shimigami games lately. And I'll go over there, and sometimes he just wants to tell me all about Tales of, or Dragon Age, or sorry, Dragon Warrior, I meant. Grandia, Suikoden, like he'll just go off on lore, and it's interesting to talk to him about it because I don't know a lot of these games, and he's super passionate and he like remembers everything. It's crazy. But the one that like really makes me feel like he's a big nerd and I have such a hard time listening to him is when he gets going on Kingdom Hearts. I just don't understand what is happening.
And I'll tell you, as a fan of that series, I have similar to the way that I never try to figure out how the Zeldas link together. I have given up on trying to figure out like the depth of the story. Like I can follow
I feel
like
like
the main
at least he
piece.
thinks he knows, like he's got
Wow.
a grasp on it. Yeah, he's very confident in how he talks about it, so I can't prove him wrong.
No, there's not enough evidence. But yeah, it is. I should have brought that one up in another segment. Like just the most unnecessarily confusing lore by far. Chris had a great joke in our little kind of offline chat. What was it? Kelsey said like I expect you to like bring up give me the entire Kingdom Hearts timeline, and Chris said, well, that'll take 358 over 2 days to explain or to go through. But yeah, that is a mess, and it's a shame because Kingdom Hearts 2, like the main story beat, like that's where kind of it got complicated, but it still made sense. And then between 2 and 3 is when they went
The
in
decade in
9
between 2 and
different
3.
yeah
Do you
exactly.
mean between
That's when they went
1.5,
like
2.8, and
no, they came later. It's when they said we need to sell more games. How do we sell these in collections? Well, we have the most confusing lore in the world. Why don't we have the most confusing collections in the world to match them? Yeah, it's insane how what's the word? Well, I don't want to say any bad words towards it, but yeah, it's honestly through 2, I could follow and I could explain, even though it was complicated. And then when you got to the 5 like spin-offs in between 2 and 3, it's almost like they had to justify their existence. And they're like, well, how do we do that? Well, we got to make this weird kind of story thing. And then they actually tried to connect them all together eventually. But I'll be honest with you, I would love to have a person who knows the lore that deeply, not to explain it all to me, but a lot of times I just want like that one detail that I feel like I'm missing, right? Like you're like, I know this guy, I know this guy, I know this guy, but why is this person in the same, the same age as this one? And
I
he'd be able to
gotta
tell
like
you.
put you in touch with my buddy because it is crazy how good his memory is. Because I'll be like, hey, I was playing AD&D Pool of Radiance the other day. Like, if you played that one, he's like, yeah, I played that in '89. He's like, Tyrant Thraxus is like such a cool villain, and he's like, do you remember this counselor? And I'm like, how do you remember that from like 35 years ago? And like, it's just nuts.
I know some people, and I've never been one of those people who like remembers years. Like I know the year I graduated, I know the year I got married, and like I kind of try to base stuff off that. But yeah, I've known people who are like, oh yeah, that was like the summer of, and they know like, oh, that was March of like '92. How do you know that was March of '90? And then like you said, like the detail and the memory is really unreal on some people. But yeah, I
It's
would
cool
love to.
I know he's played almost every JRPG on the NES, so I'm like talking to him about Destiny of an Emperor, which is fresh and new for me, and he still remembers like these Japanese names that he played on a game like 30 years ago. It's just crazy to me.
Lube is in everything,
That's awesome.
so that's probably pretty easy.
Yeah. All right, and then I thought this would be a fun one to close out on for us in the in our own nerdiness. So, what kind of physical lore items do you own from games that you love? So could be books, could be like artifacts. Like some game characters have jewelry that they wear, and that can sometimes be available. So anything that you feel like is a lore, kind of physical thing that you own from a game that you love the lore of. So Kelsey, you own any cool nerdy lore stuff?
Yeah, that M Buster you got me. It's the
Yeah.
coolest lore item for Mega Man possible. No, I recently read Pool of Radiance, which I just brought up a second ago, the book, because I thought the story in the game was so interesting that I wanted to see what it would be like in a different format. So that was definitely one that I grabbed. And then as a kid, like anything Mario, like Mario comic books, the Mario Choose Your Own Adventure books, like because they added to that universe for me, I like ate up any of those. I had dozens of them growing up. Same with Sonic the Hedgehog. I used to buy those comics constantly. I still have some. My son's been really into like the Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Man comics, so we've been picking up some of those once in a while, and basically just books. I've been trying to cut down on the other kinds of knickknacks, but I still like to read a lot, so those I could see myself picking up. Like I know they're doing a cyberpunk comic book like tie-in coming out pretty soon, and I think I might start checking those out just to expand that world, which I'm sure will have a ton of lore in it already, but it'd be cool to experience it in a different way.
Very cool. So Pool of Radiance, yeah, very cool. Are there other, so when you mentioned like tie-ins, like I remember like it's almost like I feel similar to I do about like pre-order bonuses for those. I kind of like I hope that they're not like tacked on, right? Like they're like, hey, we need a tie-in, somebody make it real quick, right? So a lot of times on those, I'll kind of find out from someone like, hey, is this good? Like how do people feel about this before kind of plunging? Like I remember for Blade Runner 2049, they were like, oh, there's gonna be like a tie-in graphic novel little thing. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm all in. And then I like waited to see how it was, and I talked to a few people, and they're like, yeah, like you don't need to read that. It's got nothing to do with anything. So, but yeah, it's that's interesting.
That's probably the smart way to do it, and maybe I can be that guy for you and be like, I just spent like $50 on Cyberpunk comics. Don't get them.
Yeah, you should do it too. It's definitely worth it. So, Chris, what do you have adorning your home with lore?
I'm kind of similar to Kelsey. I buy books, so I've got quite a, I've got like the Dark Souls trilogy compendium that like we're talking about like lore stuff that has like every description of everything and all of that stuff put together, so you can go back and research it or something if you want to, and like the art books that went with the games. But also, and I've mentioned these before too, is the Final Fantasy Ultimania archive books.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I thought those might come up on the show and we didn't talk about art books a whole lot, but art's definitely, when you consider the lore of a universe, kind of like, cave drawings or just like, depictions or renditions of different characters or worlds or something. But yeah, I thought the Ultimania books might come up because they definitely kind of fall into that category of like, it's not really not really just exclusively a strategy guide. Like it talks about the world and you get some of the artwork and stuff. So yeah, for sure, that's a good one.
Yeah, they do a great job of fleshing everything out and giving you all the information that's available, and they're really well done and not very expensive. So if you're looking for stuff, they're great to get.
Yeah, I remember when you kind of revealed to me that that's what I've heard of those books, and like I guess I never really looked into them, but then when I saw what they were, I was like, Amazon wish list right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of Street Fighter Dark Horse stuff too. They put out stuff pretty regularly. So
yes.
Yeah, when we talk about lore, yeah, that series has a huge backstory to everything that's going on, and so you can really jump down the rabbit hole if you want to. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Dark Horse, that was also the Hyrule Historia is Dark Horse,
and the
well.
Ultimania is Dark Horse.
Yeah,
yeah, Dark Horse does a lot of that stuff.
Yes, yeah, it seems to be like right in their wheelhouse. So I'm gonna keep the trend going. I am definitely not a tchotchke guy. I'm not a like, hey, get this and not even pre-order stuff. Just like I feel like there's just so much stuff. Like I don't want like more like little stuff hanging around. Like a cool physical edition is nice. A cool statue. Like I've still got my little pewter statue of the Cheshire Cat from American McGee's Alice from years ago.
I just thought of one more I want to bring up when you're done. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, no worries. So yeah, like I still have my pewter Cheshire Cat from American McGee's Alice, which I got at Babbage's ages ago. But yeah, for the most part, like little, kind of like little physical things, I'm not really into. But books, I love having a nice, nice set of books on the shelf, especially if it's like a nice, handsomely bound, like actually, like feels good in the hands, feels good to open, has just kind of puts you in the mood to get in that world. Destiny has these books called the Grimoire Anthology. In the first game, there was an area in the menus, or sorry, in the smartphone app called the Grimoire, which was kind of like the collection of all the lore items. And that doesn't exist in Destiny 2 or further, but they still call these book collections the Grimoire Anthology. So the first one is kind of the story of Oryx and the books of Sorrow, which is like these like kind of semi-religious texts that are kind of pieced together from the Hive Apocrypha over the years. Then the next one was for the Fallen Kingdoms, which is the Elixni race. And then the new one that's coming out this November, I don't think I think it's the Vex. I think it's like Fallen Machines or something like that. So it's the blue cover one. I love these books where I can have like, like a favorite, like, kind of like, like a subset of the story that I can kind of go back to and kind of like read through like these little pieces of lore. Um, and, uh, and yeah, it's so for me, if it's like a lore book or like a graphic novel, if I hear it's good, like that's the kind of stuff that I want to kind of keep me in that world. It's not usually like as big of a Skyrim fan as I am, I have zero desire to own like the Alduin statue. It just doesn't do anything to like put me in that world or keep me in it. And it's funny for like for making fun of people for reading nerdy books in the game. Like that's just what we want to do. We want to read the nerdy books out of the game too. So I think it makes sense that we all kind of lean towards that the nerd book path. So that's kind of it for me as well. So Kelsey, you said you wanted to mention one more thing.
Yeah, just when you're bringing up like tchotchkes and stuff, I was thinking of like there's one that I don't see myself giving away, and that's the Lunar 2 special edition that came out for PlayStation when they remade it. It's got like the medallion that Lucia wore. It's got a map of the overworld, and then like little cardboard like cutouts of all the characters that you can put on the map. Like those, that was the first special edition I think I ever bought that came with like extra stuff my whole life, and I always had it out and displayed. I still have all my little like cardboard men like unpunched, ready to go, and that one's really special to me just because that game was really formative. So I like that extra stuff that kind of adds to the flavor. But yeah, beyond that, I don't look for that kind of stuff typically anymore.
Yeah, I used to be, if it was a game I was really into, I would just like blindly get the collector edition, and I just don't have any interest in doing that anymore. Like I have Mass Effect 2 collector edition, Mass Effect 3 collector edition, and it's like at first it's like, oh, it's a really cool package and it's got a metal box and it's got a patch and it's got like an extra pamphlet, and I you know I'm fine that I used to be that way. It's just the way I am now. I just don't care about having
Yeah,
that extra stuff. It just doesn't matter to me anymore.
I've got so many looking in my room. I'm like, I used to think like the Catherine special edition was so funny, it had the boxers in it and the pillowcase and stuff. I'm like, but I don't need this. And like I got the big special edition Persona 5 that I had Adam like import in for me, and I haven't even opened it because I had, while I was waiting for it to come, I'm like, I couldn't wait, and I bought a copy of the game for PS3 and just played it on PS3.
Yep.
So like the only one I think I've bought in the last 10 years that I thought was really cool was the Octopath Traveler one, which has like a diorama that like opens up. It's really, really fantastic. But outside of that one, it's really, don't think I need any of these big things anymore.
I really still like CD
No,
soundtracks when they come with CD soundtracks. It's...
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I didn't know games were doing
Some
that.
still, you can sometimes still get CDs. I mean, a lot of times now it's like a download code or something, but some still do CDs.
Yeah, or you gotta buy like the big special premium edition kind of thing to get them. They don't come with the standard.
Yep. Yeah, I still like
Very
that.
cool. Yeah, I mean, being not really like a super vinyl guy, but just like kind of being into vinyl in general. It's nice to, a lot of times when you get the record, you'll just get that download code in there. But yeah, I just haven't thought about the CDs in a while. Probably the last game soundtrack CD I bought was probably, what was it, like Game Cave, the Final Fantasy VII, like that import ad that was in like every
Yeah.
EGM. There's like that big like 2-page thing with like all the game soundtracks. You'd circle them, and those were fun. So yeah, so I guess that probably wraps up our discussion on lore. We'll get this wrapped up. This is a nice little tidy 2.5 hours. So hopefully we'll keep bringing you these little bite-sized things that you can enjoy on your commute. And so yeah, we'll wrap it up here. And I want to thank Chris and Kelsey for joining me again, as always. You guys are the best.
It's a fun topic.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So, Chris, where do you find the RF Generation Collector Cast when you want to put it on your podcast?
We're like on everything, just about, except SoundCloud.
All
I
right.
still haven't figured out SoundCloud, but we're yeah, the Google Music changed, so now it's like Google Podcasts or whatever. We're there. I think, yeah, Spotify, whatever you want to do, Apple Podcasts, the Google stuff,
YouTube.
iHeartRadio.
YouTube.
I mean, it's
Really? iTunes?
yeah, it's pretty much everywhere. So you want to find the show, it's not hard. You can also just go to collectorcast.com, get it directly.
Yep. That's the easiest. That's where I go when I need my podcasts right on my podcast machine. So thanks very much, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time.